Good morning. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. My name is Bruce Mullock. Panel members this morning are Lisa Valentini, Joanne Hayes, Zahir Bayat, and Erin Chang. This will be a virtual public hearing. Participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event platform that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by computer, a phone or tablet, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When his or her item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you're called upon to speak. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to property, permission to extend or to alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property in order to create new lots. Anyone in attendance who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on a particular application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name and address and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the T-Lab will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email only. You may not agree with the decision of the committee. Decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, T-Lab, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. Procedure. I will call each item in the order that it is listed on the agenda. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if requested by the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment to you when you are reaching your 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed and may be asked to make a presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application, if substantially revised, in order to ensure that the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then, after the applicant, individuals either in support of or opposed to an application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after the speaker has finished their presentation. When all the speakers are finished, the applicant or agent will have an opportunity to rebut, but only those issues that were raised by the speakers. And that will mark the end of discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have the minutes been confirmed by members?
Yes, that would be for the October 27th meeting, Mr. Chair.
For October 27th, thank you. Okay, then I'll look to this panel for a motion to approve those minutes of the October 27th hearing. Is there a motion to that effect?
Chair, I'll move a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting.
Thank you. Second, please. Seconded by Mr. Bayat. Moved and seconded to approve those minutes. Those in favor? And Mr. Chang? Mr. Chang, do you hear me? If you do, give me a wave. We'll just pause for a moment here while we connect with one of the panel members. Aaron, Mr. Chang.
Chair, perhaps staff could send him an email or call him to see about the technical issues and we could carry on.
Thank you. That's exactly what we're doing. We've sent an email already and now we're trying to call. So to the public and those at home, we're just trying to establish technical connection here with one panel member whose input we will be needing on the application. So there. Hello, Aaron. Okay, we have I have a visual now with Aaron. Hello, Aaron. I think I just heard him then. Aaron's.
Aaron, can you hear us? And can you, we can't hear you.
Its volume's probably not on. I don't know.
Again, to those at home, we just need to find our way through this technical item so we can proceed.
Hey Aaron, we're just trying to call you, so if you can pick up and maybe we can walk you through the sound issues.
Hello?
Hey Aaron, maybe just mute your mic for now. It works? Are you able to hear us?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, Aaron, you can hear me now? If you can, say yes, please. Okay, you're with us now. Okay. Okay, we're going to just rewind a little bit. We have a motion, Aaron, moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the 27th of October hearing. So I'm going to take that vote once again now that we're all connected. So moved and seconded to approve the minutes of 27 October. Those in favor, show of hands, please. Very good. Unanimous vote to approve the minutes. Thank you. And good to have you with us. Okay. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have you received any requests for deferral on this morning's agenda?
No, we have not.
Okay. And further, are there any files to be closed?
Yes, there's one file number A0529/20TEY at 420 Gladstone Avenue. We received an email from Mr. Evan Towan's agent, received October 27th. The application had been deferred from the November 17th, 2020 C of A hearing to enable consultation with the neighbors and to revise the application. However, they are choosing not to proceed.
Okay, panel. So 420 Gladstone Avenue, not on our agenda today. It's on the 17th, but staff have had word that the applicant does wish to withdraw the application and close it. So, I would look for a motion, please, to withdraw.
Mr. Chair, I'll bring a motion to close the file.
Thank you. Second to that, Mr. Byatt. Moved and seconded to close the application 420 Gladstone. Those in favor? Unanimous vote. Motion carried. The application is closed and withdrawn. Thank you. And we move on with this morning's agenda. The first application is on your agenda. It's number 241
Mr. Chair?
Franklin Ave.
Sorry, you, I think, forgot to ask if there were any declarations of interest.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer. For propriety, among staff or panel, are there any declarations of conflict of interest on this morning's
No
agenda?
declarations, Chair.
Thank you. On application number 241 Franklin Avenue, the panel has before it applicant's materials, cover letter received from the agent, 4th of October, commenting report from Transportation, 4th of October. And we have one letter in support from 249 Franklin and one piece of correspondence in opposition from 213 Franklin, which sounds like it would be next door. All right then. Moderator, do we have the applicant with us on this application?
Yes, we do.
Good morning, applicant. You can join the meeting now by stating your name, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I, Kamen Konstantinov, am the owner and applicant of 241 Franklin.
Good morning to you. Okay, I'm just going to check with the moderator. We do have Matthew Sawa standing by? We do. So, Mr. Konstantinov, I'm going to ask you, please, to make your presentation to the panel. You'll have 5 minutes beginning now.
Good morning, panel. The proposal is to convert the existing house to a 3-unit dwelling by constructing a new secondary suite in the existing basement. And the reason for the application is the requirement minimum number of parking spaces for this type of house containing 3 dwelling units, which is 2 parking spaces, and we only have 1 parking space. It's unable to provide more than 1 because the front yard setback to the existing porch line of the building is 2.55 meters. No parking is allowed on the front yard by the harmonized zoning regulation. The side yard is 0 meters on one side and 0.56 meters on the other side. And the garage is only suitable for 1 car. But at the same time, the permit, on-street permit parking is allowed, and we have a confirmation from the authorities that it is available. We have bicycle parking, we provide that, and the level of transit service is very good as well. We are just less than a block away from DuPont Street subway station. It's a walking distance, and that's why I believe we should be able to just go with 1 parking space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just begin with questions, and then my panel colleagues have some also. I wanted to ask you, your plan is to move to 3 units in the building, and I want to ask you, is that an existing condition? Do you already have 3 units, or are there just 2 at this time?
There are 3 units. It's an existing condition.
It's an existing condition. Thank you. Ms.
We
Hayes,
want to legalize it, yeah.
you want to legalize the 3 units, okay?
Legalize it, yeah.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hayes, question.
Just on that theme, you do need a variance for the 3rd unit. I'd like you to speak to our 3 units common in the neighborhood, but you could just speak to it because you didn't speak to that variance request. Thank you.
Thank you. With the variance request for 3 units, it wasn't on the zoning document that we've received, so I'm not really prepared to talk. The only reason for this committee of adjustment now meeting is the lack of parking.
Sir, the public notice that went out lists as variance number 1 that a townhouse can have a maximum of 1 secondary suite, and in this case, the townhouse will have 2. So that is a variance that we have to consider as well.
Oh, I see. In this case, I'm not prepared to talk about that. We have some support of neighbors and that, but I'm not prepared to talk about that.
Let me see if I understand what you mean. Do you mean you do not wish to talk about that? You refuse to talk about that, or you just haven't?
No, I just don't. I'm not prepared for it. I thought that the only reason is the parking, because that's what we have in the review. The only issue was the parking. The other issue, I guess I didn't. Not prepared about it.
All right.
I didn't know about it.
I think what we'll do now is just hold this conversation for a moment, and let's go on now to the registered speaker that's standing by for that input. Good morning.
To erase and re-record it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it seems Matthew Salva is not on the line. I have made multiple attempts and an email to contact him.
Okay, so staff have attempted very diligently to contact the registered speaker,
For delivery options, press.
but we're not able to do so. All right, then, so we come back then to the applicant. And I wonder, are there further questions? Ms. Valentini, go ahead.
I have another question. How long has it been existing as 3 units?
I believe since 2000 and I would say 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Did the house have 3 units when you became the owner, or?
When we became an owner, it was, I believe, a single family. So we've applied through the process to make it.
To make it?
To convert it to a multiple unit residence.
Okay. So you
I
did.
believe it was 2017 when we purchased it, and we've applied and we were approved, and then now we are applying to add another unit.
Well, the other unit already exists, and I assume someone is living in that unit?
Correct.
Okay. Further questions, panel? Mr. Byatt, go ahead.
Hi, so here you are muted.
Apologies. I was reading the letter of opposition from the neighbor, the immediate neighbor next door, who indicated that the purchase, when the home was purchased, there indeed was only one family living in it, and the new owners had indicated that they were intending to add a secondary suite. It now appears from the agent that there actually are 3 units, and one was created illegally, and now they wish to legalize it. So as the agent has indicated, he thought he was only going to be addressing the parking issue, but the variance number 1, in fact, is afoot for a legalization of the 3rd unit that they've got. That to me expresses a little, I have a little concern about that. I wonder if the agent might reflect on that.
Okay, we'll come back to the agent, and I think the agent is also the owner in this case. So, Mr. Kostadinov, please, there's a question for you there.
Yes, that is correct. We are trying to legalize a 3rd unit. We bought the house as a single-family home. We created a duplex, and because of the way it's situated, because of the tenants, they live in separately, so we are trying to legalize a 3rd unit there.
There's one more question. Do you currently live there? Are you the primary resident and you have 2 tenants, one living above you, one living below you? Is that the case now?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a very good connection. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry about that.
I'm sorry. Are you living in that house right now?
No.
You have 3 tenants in that house?
Correct.
Okay then, so, thank you. Good questions. I think we see the situation now. Just for the information of everyone, the Committee of Adjustment, in dealing with situations like this, where we are being asked to basically legalize after the fact an existing condition, the committee is charged with looking at the application as if the proposed construction or alteration was still on the drawing board, and viewing it in that light to ask ourselves if it meets the 4 tests. So that would be our way forward on this application. Any further questions of the applicant? In that case, I think we'll take the application into committee for some discussion. And I wonder who would like to go ahead. Who'd like to go first? Mr. Byatt?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, I'll just begin the conversation. I always find these circumstances a bit challenging from the perspective of the impact on the neighbor, for example. The switch from a 2-suite unit to a 3-suite unit it may have an impact on the neighbor, adversely. That I'm always a bit concerned about. I do get the sense that the owners understood that this was a single-family unit with the possibility of turning it into a two-suite unit. But then there's this notion of, we'll create a third unit. It's not legal, but ask for permission subsequently. And I always find that a bit of a challenge, that we end up having to legalize something that was done without the legal recourse. So I'm not too comfortable with variance number 1.
Thank you very much. Panel, further comment? Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
I'll just briefly add to that. The responsibility is on the applicant to raise and bring forward to the committee reasons why they believe the variances being requested are indeed appropriate and meet the 4 tests. We haven't heard any submissions from the applicant with respect to the appropriateness of the third unit or whether or not it meets the character of the neighborhood, and for that reason I can't support the application.
Thank you very much. That's actually a very good point. You're quite right. The applicant was not ready to address that variance, nor even in fact aware that it existed on the public notice. Other comments, panel? Lisa? Aaron?
I agree with what Ms. Hayes has just said. Typically when we see extra units being put in, we tend to get some information, at least from the agent or applicant, showing there are other multi-unit residents, and the attached neighbors is got concerns in terms of noise, adding extra units. So without anything to the contrary, I agree with what Ms. Hayes has said, and I can't support that variance as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chang?
Yeah, I just feel bad for the tenant, but technically it's not possible to support this case.
Very good. Okay, in that case, I will look to one of the members for a motion, please. I tend to agree. It's actually a very good point. Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would move to refuse the application, as I don't believe I have been satisfied that the 4 tests have been met under the Planning Act.
Thank you. Second on that, Mr. Byatt. Moved and seconded to refuse the application. Those in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, it is unanimous vote in favor. Motion carried. The application is refused. And panel moves on to item number 2. 181 Sterling. On this application, panel has before it applicant's materials, a revised site plan, 27 October, cover letter from the planner, 5 October, an OMB bylaw, presentation from the agent, 27 October, and a parking justification letter from BA Group, 27 October. There is a commenting report from community planning, city planning, and also staff reports from engineering and construction, urban forestry, and also from the Director of Community Planning, TEY, 28th of October. So, moderator, do we have the agent with us?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Agent, please join us by stating your name.
Hello, my name is Daniel Rende. I'll be presenting on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you very much. Just stand by, Mr. Rende, while I see what we have in the way of those wishing to speak on the application. Do we have some people standing by?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from the other speakers, we have Kara Sweeney on the line.
Okay. Then, Mr. Rende, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation to the panel. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can we please go to E4, the presentation material? Thank you very much. Through the chair, thank you panel members and good morning. In this presentation, I'll be going quickly through the site and context, planning framework, proposal, and a quick review of the variances. Next slide. The site is located on Sterling Road, south of Bloor and west of the rail line. The site contains a mix of uses and is well served by public transit as well as cycling connections, including the future Bloor Lansdowne GO. With the future entrance adjacent to the site, there's the Bloor GO, the Up Express, the Dundas West TTC, Lansdowne TTC, and the rail path bike path within walking distance. Next slide, please. The site is designated mixed-use areas, which provides a broad range of uses. The site is also subject to a site-specific policy for the Sterling Road area, which is hatched on this map. This policy introduced new commercial and residential uses while maintaining employment uses. The policy also established a maximum gross floor area for the entire area. Next slide, please. That site-specific policy also has a site-specific zoning bylaw, which included some rezoning as well as specific development standards and building envelopes. The site is zoned commercial residential, which permits a range of both commercial, residential, and other uses. Next slide, please. In terms of building envelopes, the site, which is highlighted and also expanded on the right side, the site has a maximum height of 14 stories. Block 2, which is to the west, has a maximum height of 4 stories. There was a park initially planned on Block 5C, which is further west. However, the city has chosen to make Block 2 a public park. So what essentially is happening is that part of the density for Block 2 is now being transferred to Block 4B. Next slide, please. This is the site plan. Our proposal is for a building of 14 and 16 stories. And the reason to put the tallest portion at the east side of the building is that that's where it's going to have the least amount of impact on the Mocha Heritage Building across the street, also known as the former Northern Aluminum Company building. In terms of setbacks, there's a 3-meter setback to the south, to the POPs, and a 5.2-meter setback to the north. Next slide, please. This is a rendering looking from the south side of the site, as well as some key stats. The Mocha building is shown on the left side of that rendering. Next slide, please. This is a side-by-side of the building envelope for our block, as well as the site plan. As you can see, the 14 stories along Sterling is being maintained, and the height increase is pushed to the east side of the site. The 3-meter setback to the POPs is being maintained, and the 5.2-meter setback to the north is also being maintained. Next slide, please. In terms of our proposed variances, they fall into 3 categories or 3 buckets, which are further explained within our planning justification letter. That the first bucket relates to the density transfer. The height and the density are both being increased to facilitate that public park on Block 2. Because there are building envelopes involved, that also triggers some other variances. The second bucket is to update the zoning bylaw to standards consistent with the citywide zoning bylaw 569. And finally, the third bucket is to introduce some site-specific items. When that building envelope was first created, it just didn't account for some site-specific items that come about through detailed design. And last slide, please. So in conclusion, we are of the opinion that it meets the 4 tests. It meets the intent and purpose of the official plan. It meets the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The proposal is also desirable and has considered traffic and shadow impacts. And finally, from a numerical and an impact perspective, we are of the opinion that it is minor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the registered speaker standing by to speak. And we'll ask that speaker to join us by stating your name, please.
Thank you. Good morning. It's Kara Sweeney. I am a member of the South Junction Triangle Grows. We are the neighborhood association that represents the neighbors and residents of the area abutting this region. So we represent the neighbors and residents just north of this site. There are about 200 of us, and I'm just speaking on behalf of those 200 residents.
Go ahead, please. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We are actually just raising concerns about the lack of consultation from the city with respect to this site. You may or may not know that this area, the north region, was subject to a city study, the Bloor Street study, St. Helens to Perth, and that that study was undertaken because of a massive amount of recent development applications in this tiny little area. It's less than two kilometers. It's more like 500 meters in my view, but it's a very small area, and in which a number of us have our single family homes. And the city is was concerned enough to launch a study of this site in particular. And when the community was notified, we asked about including the site to the south of us, this large package of land in which this development is being proposed. So this is part of a huge package of land proposal and a big development that was opposed by the city, that went to the Ontario Municipal Board and for a hearing, and as a result of that hearing, they were granted the permissions that they were granted, and major variances in the zoning and bylaws. The concern that we had as residents was, why wasn't this area being considered as part of the study? Because whatever happens down there would have a significant impact on on the rest of the development, and then on our neighborhood in particular, including they're proposing amending the streets and the traffic and everything. So when we asked the city, why aren't you including this, their view was, this land has been settled. It had been taken to the Ontario Municipal Board. The city lost, the developers won. They were granted their permissions, and we were under the understanding that that was it, that they were stuck. They had won, and they got what they got from the municipal board. But we were troubled to find out, and that was a report issued in 2015, July 23rd, 2015. So we were very troubled to discover last week that in fact there has been on file since about February 2020 a requested amendment to all of the zoning and bylaws that apply to that area. And so we were told that that area shouldn't be considered as part of this larger study because it was fixed. But at the same time, the city was aware that there was an application to vary every single bylaw. And this only came to our attention literally last week. So we've been scrambling together to try and figure out, how we feel about this, and what are the variances being requested, and how will that affect our community. And I think we've come to this board meeting to ask you to halt, to ask the city to consider this area in the larger context. They are already considering multiple applications in this very, very small pocket of land, and we're sort of desperate as the residents who will be irrevocably and devastatingly impacted by these builds in our neighborhood. And we were so encouraged when the city said, we're going to consider all of this, and but we can't consider that land because it's already been approved. We were very upset to hear that in fact there was an application pending, and that we, as the, we're a very active residents group. We work very closely with the city and have on all of these applications. We were mentioned as a residents association in legislature just last week. Merritt Stiles, our provincial MPP, mentioned the incredible amount of building requests
I must
in our
ask you.
small area.
I must ask you to make your final comment now, please.
So we are asking to please hold off on making a decision so that this application can be considered in a larger context, as I just laid out. We're asking to hold off on this decision-making process so that the community and its members can be consulted.
Thank you. Panel members, are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, we shall return to the applicant. And the applicant, we'll ask you to comment on what you've heard there from the representative of the Residents Association with respect to your particular project. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, just a couple of quick points. Notice was sent out according with the Planning Act and with the city's procedures. So notice would have been sent out for this committee of adjustment application. It's also been available on the city's application development application website. All of the materials have been public, but I do understand that notice would have been sent out before this meeting, which again was in compliance with the city's notification procedures. Also, we are not varying every single bylaw, which the deputant had made a point of. In our opinion, the site is zoned for a 14-story building with certain development standards. We are of the opinion that our changes are quite minor and they meet the 4 tests of the development, of the committee of adjustment. And then finally, I do want to, and I actually, to add, I would like to ask that the owner speak. They're also on this line as well, if that's possible.
Ms. Valentini?
I just want to ask a quick question.
We have a question
before-
for you, Mr. Rende, before we go to anyone else. So let's see
If that's okay, just because
Absolutely.
we
No,
lose
yeah.
him and I just, in terms of the zoning, can you just, does it apply just to block 4B, or does it apply to the whole site that includes block 2? Because I understand the GFA and that applies to the whole site, so I'm assuming the zoning bylaw does as well.
Yes. So
Okay.
if you go to the 6th slide, the 5th and 6th slide, that shows the area that's subject to that site-specific bylaw, which, as the deputant mentioned, was the result of an OMB hearing.
So
that applies for several blocks within that area. There is a site and area specific policy as well as a zoning bylaw. And that is part of the justification why this area was left out of that Bloor Perth study, and that this had already sort of been subject to a study with specific heights, gross solar area established.
So the slide that's
point,
on the screen, right? Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. I just wanted, the slide that's on the screen shows all of the sites that are included in the zoning bylaw that
Yes.
are okay, subject to it,
Yes.
and it includes block C, and you're just moving, not just, but you're not adding extra GFA to this entire site. You're just transferring it to another site, right? So
Yes.
the zoning bylaw applies to all of these blocks that are on our screen right now. That's how I understood it, but I just wanted to be sure after what we heard the residents say. So that's all I wanted to know.
Yes.
And I have one other quick question. When you're referring to, there was a slide that referred to an acronym POPS. Is that just an acronym for the public space that's abutting the lot, the publicly accessible space,
Yes.
or is
So-
POPS
so
something
that's-
different? Thank you.
Yes, so that stands for publicly accessible open space.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Rende? Mr. Cheng, go ahead.
Hello, I just have a quick question about the conditions set up by the planning department. There are 3 conditions recommended by the planning staff. Are you familiar with those conditions?
Yes, I am familiar with those conditions. We have reviewed the positive planning report from staff, and the owner is also on the line if she can add some sort of additional background to that. But yes, we are aware of those conditions, and I do note that those conditions are actually addressed to the owner, so she might be in a better position to then speak to that.
Okay, now,
just wanna make sure.
okay, thank you. With respect to the owner speaking, now there's another question. We'll come back to the owner in just a minute. Right now, we're asking some questions of you. The owner will have a short time to speak as part of your rebuttal, 5 minutes, but not to make a presentation from the start. Her comments will need to be in relation to what was said by the registered speaker that called in, Ms. Sweeney. But we do have a question for Mr. Rende from Ms. Hayes. Go ahead.
Thank you. With respect to the change in number of stories in block 4B, it's going from 7 to 16, and another from 14 to 16, and another from 12 to 16. I'd like you to speak to I heard your comments with respect to closer to the rail line or whatever the case may be, but I'd like to hear your submissions with respect to impact, with respect to the change in the number of stories in all those blocks in comparison to what the bylaw in force resulted in. Please and thank you.
The
Thank
question's
you.
for you, Mr. Rende.
Yeah, can we please bring up the presentation again? I think that the 6th slide, or actually the 7th slide, sorry, the 9th slide, please. That might be helpful. That's the side-by-side comparison. Okay, so the increase from 7 stories to 14 and 16 stories, that's only around the north, west, and south edge of the building envelope. This is not quite a height, it's more of a step back. And generally buildings, the base of buildings are pushed to the street, so that's Sterling Road. So a 14-story building, that's not a tall building, so that's typical of a mid-rise building or a podium being pushed to the street there. And then in terms of the increase, in terms of the increase in height, as you mentioned, that's on the east side. And so that's from a shadow perspective. Most of the shadows fall within the rail corridor, and they are generally pushed away in terms of the shadows. In terms of the overall impact, it's pushed away from the MoCA building on the west side of Sterling Road. So that made the most sense in terms of how to change or add the extra height stories. So when we talk about impact, it was specifically with the shadow impacts as well as the visual impact. This was not really mentioned as part of this presentation. There was a visual analysis as well, because certain views of the MoCA building have to be maintained. So that was done as well, and so the 16 stories, it made the most sense to be pushed to the east side of the site.
Thank you very much. Panel, are there any further questions for Mr. Rende? Okay, hearing none, we'll allow the owner to speak specifically to the comments made by the Residents Association representative. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 2 speakers here representing the owner. There's Pooja Sharma and Andrea Opedesano. Which one should I unmute, Mr. Rende?
Mr. Rende?
Sorry, go ahead.
So if you could have Andrea speak, please. She is prepared to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
Hello, my name's Andrea Pedicano, and I'm representing Marlin Spring on this application. And through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to address the one comment about public consultation. In addition to the statutory notice that went out for committee, Marlin Spring did take an initiative and work with the counselor who was in attendance to advise the community of this of the application in March of 2021 of this year. We also held a community meeting on our DOVERCOURT, which was attended by members of the community, the counselor's office, as well as planning staff on March 11th. And we also sent out an update email to the community on March 5th, letting them know that this October 5th of this year, letting the community know that this application is sort of moving forward, and of the changes that we've made in the last year to address comments and revisions. So I just wanted to just address that one point about the fact that we did do our best to reach out and consult the community on this application. And if you'd like, I can also speak to the Perth Bloor study. Marlin Spring did participate in that community meeting. I can't speak on behalf of planning, but given that this was there was a bylaw and an official plan change OPA in place for this, it was decided to not be subject to the study that was happening on Perth, but Marlin Spring did participate in that planning study.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? No. Okay then. Are there any further questions for Mr. Rende? If not, we'll take the application into committee. I'm not hearing any further questions from panel, so we will take this pardon me. We will take the application then into committee now for discussion, moving toward a decision. Panel members, your thoughts on this application? Who'd like to go first? Ms. Valentini, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all the comments made by both the applicant and the representative for the owner and the representative for the Residents Association. And I understand the concern of the Residents Association, but I also understand, that's why I was trying to sort of figure out that the Perth study may not apply or does not apply, because since there's already a bylaw in place for these lands, and as I understand from the presentation, while there is an increase in height on block 4, it's a shifting of the GFA. They're not adding extra GFA, and it's a shifting so that they can make block 2 now a public park. It sounds like that this has gone through, all the appropriate channels with the planning department and staff, and I understand that, from what I understand, the density is going to be mostly situated, the increase next to the rail corridor. So I'm in support of the application, and that I think, and there is also, I noted a parking justification that spoke to all the other variances for the parking, and I was satisfied by that. So I'm in support of the application. I think the shifting of the GFA to this site and making, to allow for the public park would be a good thing, and I think, in my view, it meets the 4 tests. So,
thank you. Yes, Mr. Byatt, go ahead, please.
Zahir, you're muted again?
You're muted, Zahir.
Sorry, I'll begin again. I'd just like to concur with Ms. Valentini. I think this project has been well thought through, and despite the having taken into account the Residents Association comments and concerns, it does appear that a lot of thought has gone into it. There are also conditions that have been set by planning, engineering, and forestry. And I think those departments have again addressed the various variance requests. So as long as compliance with those conditions are met, I'm quite satisfied that this is a supportable application.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Ms. Hayes, please go ahead. Then Mr. Cheng.
I would just add a general comment to the to address, you know, some of the comments made by the South Junction Triangle Group. I think sometimes it can be frustrating when something has gone through a full public process, and in terms of you know, what a planning department might view as tinkering and trying to come up with a common thing, it's unfortunate sometimes that those negotiations and discussions didn't happen during the full public process when the first bylaw was put into place. Having said that, though, I think that what is being proposed and the report that we've received from planning with respect to highlighting the rationale from a public perspective that's gone into the changes that are being proposed, and that the increase in height is, I think, can be successfully argued it can be lesser impact than what might have been initially proposed. I would be in support of the application, subject to the conditions that have been noted by the various departments.
Sorry,
Thank you.
through you, Mr. Chair, apologies. There was a very late council letter that we had received and we had forgotten to show. If that can just be brought up.
Let's bring it up. What we're hearing here is there's a late letter from Councillor Bilo, and okay, this is yesterday. So we're just bringing this up for the information of all concerned. Okay. Thank you. Of course, the panel will be making its own decision upon its own hearing and judgment on what we have read and heard with respect to the application. Mr. Cheng, you had comments to make with respect to the application. Go ahead, please.
I basically confer with all my colleagues and I'll review the planning and staff report. I also look at the overall massing of the building, the height and density changes, and I think it makes sense and everything works well with the motor across the street, and I think it works well with the shadows with the railroad. I think I can support this application with conditions.
Thank you very much. And for my part, I particularly noted the planning report, which was extensive, a very extensive report, concluding that, in their view, the variances were desirable and minor. So I would be supporting this application. All of this having been taken into account, I look to panel for a motion, please. Mr. Byatt, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Valentini's hand went up first, but that's okay. Yeah, I'd like to propose that the application be approved, subject to conditions from forestry, engineering, and planning.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Valentini. So moved and seconded to approve, subject to planning, engineering, and forestry. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Unanimous vote to carry the motion and to approve the application. Thank you. We move on to item number 3. (340) Gerrard Street East. On this application. We have before us applicant's materials, planning rationale from the agent, July. Presentation material from Gladkey, October. Transportation review letter from C.F. Crozier and Associates, October. There are commenting reports from Transportation, and another from Transportation, from Heritage Preservation. And there are staff reports from Heritage Preservation and Urban Forestry. Late received materials include correspondence in concern or interest received just in the last day or so from Andrew Randall at 350 Gerrard East. There is also correspondence on file from Soren Helmer at 350 Gerrard. That's in support. And in interest or concern, there is correspondence from Andrew Randall, received 29 October, 350 Gerrard Street. So, those are the materials before us. And this application is to convert the existing 3-story building into a community center with office use, and to construct a 1-story front vestibule and an exterior fire escape. So I'll ask the applicant to join us, please, by stating your name.
Lindsay Toth, C-O-T-H.
Good morning. And moderator, do we have speakers standing by? Yes, we do. Okay, so Lindsay, thank you very much. You'll have 5 minutes now to make your presentation to the panel. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I ask city staff to please pull up the slide deck? My name is Lindsay Toth, and I am a planner at Gladkey Planning Associates. I am representing Community Food Centers Canada to request a number of variances for their property located at 340 Gerrard Street East. Community Food Centers Canada, CFCC, is a registered Canadian charity that creates spaces for people to come together to cook, grow, share, and advocate for good food. CFCC's programs measurably improve the lives of Canadians struggling with poverty and food insecurity. CFCC has purchased the property at 340 Gerrard Street East to use as its head office, with community space that will be used to run programming for nearby residents of Regent Park, Moss Park, and St. Jamestown. Next slide, please. The subject property is located on the north side of Gerrard Street East, just east of Parliament Street. The immediate neighbors include a Toronto Community Housing building to the west, townhouses to the north and east, and the Regent Park redevelopment to the south. Next slide. Around 1913, a 3-story brick and beam warehouse building was constructed on the property for a mattress company and subsequently contained various commercial uses, most recently offices and gallery space. The development proposes to retain the existing 3-story building in its entirety. Next slide. A covered fire escape will be constructed on the west side of the building to comply with Ontario Building Code. A 1-story front vestibule addition will improve energy efficiency and offer a physically accessible entrance to the building. The paved parking area will be removed and replaced with landscaping. The FCC will also undertake interior renovations to accommodate the office and community center uses. Next slide. Most of the variances are related to the existing building. Minor variances related to height, rear yard setback, and side yard setback are required because the existing building does not meet modern zoning standards. We also require minor variances to recognize the proposed office use as a continuation of the legal non-conforming commercial uses that have been present on the site since the construction of the original warehouse building. The proposed exterior alterations trigger 2 variances. One to eliminate the parking requirement, and another to accommodate the increased density resulting from the front vestibule. In our opinion, the requested variances meet the 4 tests prescribed under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. First, the general intent and purpose of the city's official plan is maintained. The property is designated neighborhoods. This designation permits residential and related uses, including community-serving institutional uses and continuing small-scale commercial uses in a variety of low-rise building forms. This proposal upholds neighborhood policies. Second, the general intent and purpose of the city's zoning bylaw is maintained. The property is zoned residential, which permits the community center use. There is evidence that the building and commercial use are lawfully existing, having received a building permit in the late 1980s, with ongoing operations predating the current zoning bylaw. The variances requested are to allow for the continued use and operation of an existing building. The conversion of the front parking area to a landscaped area aligns with zoning standards restricting front yard parking. The parking review letter received by committee October 26th finds it is not necessary to provide any vehicular parking on site because the location is well served by public transit, the community center use will serve a local population, and a surplus of bicycle parking will be provided. Third, the proposal is appropriate for the development of the property. The proposed changes will not significantly alter the existing building, but will add community space that will benefit the neighborhood. The proposed uses are compatible with adjacent properties and continue an established pattern of commercial uses on the north side of Gerrard Street East. Fourth, the variances requested are minor. Most of the variances relate to maintaining the existing building. The proposed front vestibule adds only 14 square meters of floor space, and the removal of the parking spaces will not generate any adverse impact. The building is currently being used for office space, so there is little change in operations. The variances only seek to recognize this as a legal continuing use. To conclude, the approval of these variances would result in very little physical change to the building, but the aesthetics, safety, energy efficiency, and accessibility of the property would be improved. And most importantly, this development represents an opportunity to welcome a highly compatible non-residential use to the neighborhood that provides incredible community benefits.
I'll ask you to make your final comment now, please.
I am finished. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much. Panel members, we do have someone waiting in to speak on this. Let's go to the registered speaker first and return. So, moderator, we'll ask the registered speaker to join us now, please, by stating your name.
Peter Grater speaking.
Good morning. Yes, would you mind stating your name once again, please?
Yeah, my name is Peter Grater.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Peter. Peter, you have 5 minutes to address your comments to the panel. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I live at 41 Spruce Street, which is the townhouse project immediately behind, or the townhouse condominium immediately behind this building. And the unit I live in is unit number 9, which is the unit that's most affected by this change. I have some concerns. I mean, the first concern relates to the restricted access behind the building. I mean, the history of this building is that in years gone by, there was a lot of misuse of drugs, etc., and transient people moving behind the building. And in order to restrict that access, a fence was erected at least 30 years ago to prevent that access. Now, I understand that the proposal has undertaken to maintain that fence, and I would like that to be a condition of the approval. The second issue is that the fire escape that's being built is quite close to our particular unit. It's quite large and bulky. I don't know whether it's possible for that fire escape to be moved further away from our unit to be less intrusive. I don't know what kind of materials are going to be used to make it aesthetically pleasing. I don't know whether that's even within the mandate of the Committee of Adjustment, but that's the second concern. The third issue relates to the window treatment on the north side of the building. Some of the windows on the north side of the building are of opaque glass, and these are very close to existing units. And I would request that as a condition of approval that the opaque windows are maintained, and that the other windows on the north side of the building, which are very close to the building of 41 Spruce Street should be of opaque glass.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the final issue is also relating to access to the property from the GERRARD side, and again, this is an area with a transient population, with lots of reasons to maintain security, and I understand that the proposed use will also maintain fencing on GERRARD Street to restrict access to this building, particularly during after hours. So I don't know whether that can also be a condition, but if it could possibly be a condition of approval, I would like that to be a condition of approval.
Thank you. Okay, if you're finished, Peter, I have a question for you. On your final point there, the access from GERRARD, are you talking about access to the rear area that you spoke about, or access to the building, or what?
I'm actually talking about access to the front of the building. Currently, there is a fence on GERRARD Street, which prevents access to the building during after hours. But there have been a number of issues with people accessing the property in after hours, and fencing certainly helps prevent that.
Now I understand. Okay. Panel members, any questions for the speaker? Okay. Moderator, do we have other speakers registered?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have someone else in support.
Okay, let's go to that speaker then. Good morning.
Hi, Mr. Eisenberger, you are unmuted on your phone. You are able to speak.
Thank you very much. My name is Bob Eisenberger. I also live in the townhouses at 41 Spruce Street, and I'm in Unit 8, next door to Peter Grader, who just spoke. We had the opportunity, another board member and I had the opportunity to speak with Nick Saul, the CEO of Community Food Centers, and he showed us through the building and explained a lot of what was being planned. And we had previously sent several questions to their contact person, expressing some concerns or questions that we had about the project. In my opinion, the answers to those questions were quite satisfactory. I believe that in general, the requested use of the property is overall quite benign for the neighborhood. I think other uses could have been much more deleterious to us, much more disadvantageous. So in general, it seems like their intentions are good, and as long as I know there are a number of details that have yet to be finalized, or I understand that, specific details, construction materials, particulars about the windows, etc. But Mr. Saul indicated great willingness to work with us and be open and transparent to the neighborhood and concerns. So overall, I'm in support of this application.
Thank you, sir.
And sorry, I would also just add, I also am in support of Peter Grader's concerns. Those are, I think, shared by residents of this townhouse condominium property, and he's laid those out well. And I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenberger. And we're going to go back now to the applicant to comment on the 4 items that Mr. Grader raised with us. So we'll go back now for rebuttal, and the issues I will ask you to speak to specifically are what steps have been taken to control use of the rear area to avoid misuse, questions about the nature of the fire escape, whether it can be made to be not as intrusive as it appears to be on the original plan, windows on the north side, just a strong sense that they should be opaque glass, and that's essential. And also access to the front open area of the property from Gerrard Street. How is that to be controlled on the new project? Go ahead, applicant. You have 5 minutes to address those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to address those concerns from the residents. So there has been, just to sort of preface, there has been community outreach completed prior to this application. There was a flyering campaign through the, a flyering campaign for the adjacent properties, which is how we were connected with Peter and Bob, and we have had discussions with them and several other neighbors as well to address some of their concerns. And so these concerns are things that we have heard before, and I just want to point out that Community Food Centres Canada is a community serving organization, and so they are very committed to working with neighbors, being good neighbors themselves, and helping to address these concerns. So in terms of restricted access behind the building, it is planned that the fence that is existing now will not be removed. At some point in the future, it may need to be replaced and upgraded, in fact, but the Community Food Centres Canada does not have any concerns about that. That will be maintained. As well as access from Gerrard Street, the existing fence will be removed, but a new fence will be installed that will serve the same purpose. So after hours access to the building will continue to be restricted with the new fence. In terms of the fire escape, the location has been set on where it is. It's because that is the location that was deemed to provide the best access for people within the building to exit the building in case there is an emergency. So from a safety standard, we don't really want to move the fire escape anywhere else. The materials are still being determined, but we have spoken to the residents about the fact that they are going to be sort of contemporary, light-looking panels of some sort of metal material. So the aesthetics are a concern to my clients as well, and so we'll work with community members to hopefully satisfy their aesthetic concerns there. And likewise, the window treatments on the north side of the building, there will be consideration for opaque glass being maintained when those windows are replaced and upgraded.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant panel? There is one from Ms. Valentini. Go ahead.
Thank you. In terms of, I think I'm in favor of the proposed use, but I just want to clarify the reason for the variance in terms of the use.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, it sounds like it's a legal non-conforming use, but is it, do you need, and typically when, the way I understand it, if it's a legal non-conforming use, you don't typically need a variance for that use unless you're changing it. Is there a slight change? Is it because you're introducing more office and that doesn't qualify as commercial use? I don't know. I'm a little bit confused by why that variance is there if this has been used as a commercial property since before the bylaw.
Yes, so the purpose is it's a little bit hazy whether office commercial use is the same as the current commercial and the current and the pre-existing commercial uses. So just to firm everything up and fully legalize it, we're asking that the committee recognize that the proposed office commercial uses are recognized as a continuation of previous commercial uses present on the site.
Okay, and in terms of office uses, that's a permitted use for commercial zoning, or well, I guess it's not zone commercial.
It's
so
residential.
Residential.
Zone, yeah.
Okay.
So the residential zone does permit continuing commercial uses.
I understand. Okay, I understand that.
So that's why we're
curious as to why you needed a variance for that if it's, you know, a legal non-conforming, but it sounds like from what I understood you just saying, there's sort of a bit of a change in terms of the office component, and that's why you need the variance just to legalize it in a sense. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Very good. Then, at this stage, we shall take the application into committee. If anyone on panel wishes to proceed right away with the motion. Ms. Hayes?
Thank you. I'm prepared to start. I think that the application as proposed meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I don't think that the impact of the new use is going to be any substantially different than current use. I think from the submissions and that we received before and the oral submissions now, it's clear that the applicant is been outreaching to the community and is open to the concerns that have been expressed. I think that the proposal, is an exciting community support for the neighborhood, which is admirable. If my colleagues have no further comments, I would move to approve the application subject to forestry condition number 2, the condition from Heritage, and that opaque glass be on the windows on the north side of the building.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? It is seconded by Mr. Cheng. Moved and seconded to approve the application. All those in favor, show of hands, please. The motion is carried unanimously and the application is so approved. Thank you. Panel moves on to application item number 416, Ferndale Ave. And here we have before us applicant's materials, revised site plan, revised zoning waiver. There's a copy or correspondence from the agent to waive the pre-circulation. There are presentation materials from the agent, 27 October. There are staff reports from engineering and construction and community planning. And we have correspondence in support and in support only from 18 Ferndale, 12 Ferndale, 14 Ferndale, and 36 Ferndale. So with that, we'll ask the applicant to join us, please, by stating your name.
Can you hear me?
We hear you now. State your name, please.
My name is John Boone. I am acting as agent for the owners.
Very good. Thank you very much. Just stand by, Mr. Boone. Moderator, is there a speaker standing by? Yes, okay. So, Mr. Boone, you have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, to make your presentation to the panel. Please go ahead.
Chair, may I just ask one thing before we start?
Yes.
I just want to, I would just like to, just so that we're clear on the variances, from the supplementary material, I had concluded that variance number 2 you're wishing to revise, so that would now be 23.19% or 1.113 meters squared. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And no other changes, no other amendments to the variances, am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. If you could pull up, I've noticed the plans are the old plans. There's a revised version of the plans. It's actually labeled correspondence, October 27th. They were received. It's up on the AIC website. That would be preferable to look at during the presentation.
Okay, we'll see if we can find those. I know we do. We have received them.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if we can pull them up. Hang on for a second, please. Just while we're doing that, let's capture the detail that relates to that revision. So just formally, so tell us which variance is being altered and what the new number is.
Sure. It's variance number 2.
Yes.
And which is essentially the soft landscape between the laneway suite and the lane.
Yes?
We were at 0%, and through discussions with planning, we've created some soft landscaping pockets in that area. And in fact, if we get the plans up, the calculations are indicated on the site plan itself. So we
will do that, but just so we have this on the record, do you know the percentage number that replaces 0?
Yep, I do. So on the zoning waiver as well. So it is 23.19% soft landscaping instead of 0%.
Thank you very much.
And the total area of soft landscape will be 1.13 square meters instead of 0.
All right, just so I'm clear, is that, I think we just want the percentage for number 2. Is there another variance that deals with?
No, that's the only one that's changed.
Okay, yeah, so it's just the 23.19 replaces the 0 in minor variance number 2 officially. Okay, thank you. That's what we're dealing with then.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes, this is the current set of plans. So, so thanks. So let me. I'm going to just start the presentation by giving a quick, broad overview of what's transpired. So I noted in the introduction to this presentation that there was a letter indicating a waiver for the pre-circulation. I'm not sure exactly if that was the nature of the letter itself. We had sought out to get a hearing date, but we've gone through pre-circulation with this project twice, actually. First in June 4th, and unfortunately the planner that was involved with that process, after we've been making changes, Elmira Zarabi had left the planning department and Catherine Young had taken her place. So so then starting, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, we went through what might be called another pre-circulation process to revise the drawings again. So I hope the committee can understand that we've been quite timely with our responses and quick to try and deal with planning's expectations. We didn't seek to waive the circulation process. So the drawings that we are looking at now on this presentation, so that was a letter that was sent to planning just last week at the top of the drawing. So the drawings that we're looking at, I'll quickly run you through what we've done to hopefully address planning's concerns, but I'd like to speak more specifically to the impasse that we've reached with regards to cutting into the rear yard setback in an angular plane. So on the soft landscape for the rear yard, I think if you go to drawing number A3, if you go a few down, the first floor plan there, right there, correct. So the rear yard landscape has been interpreted a couple of different ways in the zoning review and during the planning process in terms of what we define as rear main wall. And as a result, it's almost technically impossible for us to achieve this 85% soft landscaped open space. So I'm referring to the drawing to show the committee the essential dominant characteristic, if you will, of the rear yard, which is mostly yard. The only hard paving that exists there is enough for the occupants to take out the garbage, for the postal delivery and fire and emergency services to get to the door. So there's no real excessive landscape involved with this proposal. It's just that, well, actually also because of our setback limitations, the soft landscape component, we can't get to 85%, but I'm hoping that you can see that based on the site conditions, we are providing an ample amount of soft landscape. And also through discussions with planning, they've asked us to use permeable brick pavers for the hard surface, and we are okay with that as a condition of approval. Now, I don't think the planning had problems with the landscape. As we've gone back and forth, I believe that we came to some that we came to a resolution, if you will, in terms of how we deal with the soft landscape area of this lot. So I'm going to speak to the setback of the suite, the setback conditions where we just can't seem to quite make this fit. And I'm going to take a moment just to speak to that variance in its whole. So I'd like to take you to the elevation drawing. If you scroll down, I believe you're going to find that the south elevation, either one of them. I've drawn the angular setback line. Let's get to the right drawing. A8, if you could. Yeah, and if you are able to zoom in there on the building itself, you're going to see, so we see the laneway suite here on the left and the main house on the right. Now, with this particular lot, the reason that we can't achieve this setback,
I must ask you to make your final comments now, please.
Sure. The reason we cannot fit within this setback angular plane requirement is because the existing house is set back around 8.5 meters from the front lot line, where typically it's 4 to 6 meters. And so the building is not that long. This building is just long enough to fit a car on the ground. And then we have a suite up above. So it's not as though the building is being made longer to flaunt the bylaw. We're trying to fit this building within the back of the lot in the best way that we can. We are cutting into this angular plane. We understand this. We have support from neighbors on each side of the building. So in this sense, I believe that we're meeting the intent of the bylaw.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Leave it there. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Let's go now to the speaker standing by.
Hi, Ms. Maynard. You are unmuted. You are able to speak.
Yes, thank you for unmuting me. My name is Vanessa Maynard. I am Ferndale, I am on Alvin. So that is a direct neighbor. So the rear of the houses are very close. So I'm coming with a couple concerns. I wanted to hear the whole presentation. First of all, I'm wondering how many, I know this is a separate building structure from the main house. I'm wondering how many residents in total there would be. So for instance, the typical residential houses have perhaps 2 if they have a basement suite. So what I'm wondering is how many units, how many families would be in the main part of the house, and how many could this, even though this shows like it would be 1 apartment, could there possibly be 2 in there as well as 2 in the main house? Because that seems like a lot for this area. The other thing, another concern I had was I wanted to sort of ask, I guess the panel there, I do right away have concerns about this extension into the public space. This is a very busy traffic laneway with trucks, and I'm past the house, so constantly all day there is a lot of traffic flow. There's also historically a lot of problems with snow removal and trucks getting down that laneway. So having getting into the public area with that extension on the upper part, I am concerned with that, and I wanted to ask perhaps the panel to consider that, their take on that. My last point is I would like a condition perhaps, if possible, on the build. This, as I already mentioned, is a very busy laneway, and we need consistent access throughout the day, and I'm concerned with construction. So could this be a condition that construction, trucks, vehicles, things like that are never blocking the laneway? It's been a rule in the past that that their vehicles would be on Ferndale and nothing would be sitting in idle or stopped or parked within the laneway. I saw in the photos the neighbor, for instance, could they get permission or rent space from the neighbor with that blue and white car and use their space instead? I just wouldn't want that laneway to be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just comment on your final point and then see if panel members have any questions. So with respect to construction issues are real. However, construction issues fall outside the mandate of the Committee of Adjustment. The committee is just dealing with the minor variances that have been put before us, And if the application happened to be approved and there were construction issues, then the recourse is to contact the construction department of the city to bring those to their attention. But we'll go back now to the applicant and ask the applicant to respond to two issues that you brought up specifically, a couple of questions. Applicant number one, first question is, when this is said and done, if it was to be approved, how many units would there be in the main house? How many units in the laneway suite? Number two would be, there's a sense that the public space, that the extension juts into public space. Could you comment on that, please? Agent, go ahead.
Thank you. One suite for the laneway suite and a single family dwelling. So the lot will contain 2 units. Extension into public space, I'm not quite sure how to respond. I don't know what variance that might refer to, but it's a permitted use under the bylaw. But if the speaker could be a bit more specific about what is meant by extension into public space, I can answer that question more clearly.
Well, then that's fair enough. Let's see if we can go back to the speaker. We'll just take a moment here. Ms. Maynard, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. No, and I might not completely understand all the drawings. It's just from how I interpreted the last part of the presentation today from the presenter, when that upper part seemed to be encroaching into the laneway. So the bottom was set in and the second story was set further into, I know it's on the second floor, but if that was on the first floor, that would be right into the laneway. Do you understand?
Thank you. Applicant?
Yeah, so no, that's a fair question. As I say, this particular lot, I don't know how, in one way you could look at it, the building is cutting into the setback. In our sense, we feel as though the setback is cutting into the building. The garage is located where the other garages are, so you're not going to see this building jump out in front of any of the other garages. And it's not longer than other garages. It's just that we have a short lot and we have a house, as I had said, that is set back, a great 8.5 meters from the front lot line. So we're just trying to fit a laneway suite in here, and I think this is an opportunity for the committee to consider minor variances in this way. Like, there's not a large body of precedent for laneway suites, but I think this is an opportunity to say that, this angular, we can't always fit it into this angular plane. But are we being flagrant? Is this building being too big? And I don't think that's the case. I think we're just trying to fit one in here as best we can. That's the best answer I think that I could give to that question.
Thank you very much. Let's see if panel members have any questions for you. There is one from Ms. Valentini.
Thank you. Is it possible to build a laneway suite, excuse me, on this site if you comply with the planning request that you meet the setback? I noticed it's a 2-bedroom laneway suite, which is nice, but I don't know if that's larger than most. Sometimes they're 1 bedroom, often when we see these. So is it possible to build something that complies with the setback, or are you saying it's just not possible at all?
No, that's a good question, and again, I act as ambassador to the owner. To be honest and fair, what they're doing is they're going to accommodate their parents in this particular suite who need separate bedrooms. Now, I've tried to go back and forth with the owners and planning about, with the exact question that you're asking me here. And as I've done some research, I realized that in fact most of these suites are single bedroom. And so, in that sense, as I explored the options with them, I realized they need 2 bedrooms, or I guess not at all. They'll consider other options for how they're, where their parents may live. So this is a kind of an aging in place strategy, if you will. And I think the idea that we could possibly introduce some 2-bedroom stock to the availability of rental suites, that we don't create a kind of a large body of single bedroom stock for the laneway suites, is another opportunity, I think, for the committee to consider where variances are minor. So the long answer to your question is that, you know, this is as small as we can make it. We tried to cut the roof back, but we just lose headroom in the space and it becomes and feels cramped. I unfortunately, I don't believe it will be possible for us to achieve, to cut into that, to not cut into that angular plane.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions, Mr. Cheng?
Hello. I'm quite satisfied with the drawings you have provided explaining how that setback related to your design, and you just explained why you need 2 bedrooms, which is understandable. I just want to double check with you on item F2 ECS report. I assume you have read it?
The ECS report, the firefighting access?
Yes, that's right. So 2 parking spaces at grade with 3 storage area. I just need 1 minute of your time to go over with us how we're going to address this.
Yep. No, we've already done that. Yeah, we sent a letter and it's on the drawing. So if you go to the site plan drawing on drawing number A1, you're going to see in the front yard at the north side of the yard, there is a refuse bin measuring 3 feet by 10 feet for the use of all occupants. That's up in the front yard. And the bike spaces, 2 bikes, parking spaces for 2 bicycles have also been indicated inside of the suite area. And that's indicated on the ground floor plan on drawing number A3. But I'm just pulling up the ECS report to make sure, because I know the other aspects regarded firefighting, access, and refuse. And I believe that we did address all of their concerns in the response that we sent back. So,
okay.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then we'll take the application into committee for a motion for discussion. Mr. Byett.
Just a quick question to the agent. There's a planning report that recommends refusal of variance number 4. This is with regard to the setback from the main house. Comment on that, please.
I'm sorry, you had cut away for a brief moment. Could you ask the question again?
Sorry, certainly. There's a planning report a refusal of variance number 4 regarding the separation distance of the suite and the existing detached dwelling. So
Hi, Zahir. You're having some connectivity issues. We didn't catch the last part. If you can just repeat that.
I think that I can respond, though. I think that I understand what Zahir is asking.
The question is that planning recommends refusal of minor variance 4. What's your response to that?
No, absolutely. In fact, that's what I've been speaking to during the that was the variance that I wanted to speak to during the presentation. That is where, unfortunately, we reached an impasse with planning. We've addressed most of their other concerns with regards to landscape, the other variances, but the variance number 4 that planning is recommending be refused is the one that we're speaking to right now, which is essentially the rear of the building cutting into the angular plane setback. And again, for the reasons that I've mentioned, it's just it's not a large building. It's just as large as the other garages. It's just that we have a short lot, and for this reason, I'm hoping that the committee will find that this is minor.
Well, yeah, the question of having a short lot is a fact. I mean, this is what you as designer are dealing with. The job of the committee is to try to. Some lots are not as big as others, and that dictates what can be built on them. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that short lot and the setback of the house. The house also has a larger setback, but I understand your point.
Is the front setback greater than other houses on the street?
No, well, it varies, but it's the setback itself. It's that all these houses are 8.5 meters back from the front lot line. So it triggers the variance in essence. Like if we had that extra 2 meters, typically houses are 4 to 6 meters from the property line. So it triggers the variance, but it's essentially, if we had 2 more meters, we could pull it off, but we just don't.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions, panel, for the applicant? Hearing none, we'll take the application then into committee for discussion and moving toward a decision. Ms. Hayes, go ahead, please.
I'll start. I'm a little bit conflicted on this one, but yes, the City of Toronto has a laneway suites bylaw, but it may not be that all properties that abut a laneway are automatically suitable for a laneway suite. I think in this particular instance, the number of variances being requested, rear yard setbacks, the distance between the properties, and the height, I think it is too much for this property. That's unfortunate, but I really feel that the massing and the separation distance between the properties and the resulting built form is not something that I can support, and I don't think that it meets the tests, and that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Byatt.
I'd just like to echo part of Ms. Hayes' comments. And I always take my cue from our city staff. In this case, it's planning's comments and observations and their recommendations. Your comment, Mr. Chair, also that not all laneway sites are necessarily appropriate for a build. Having said that, I think I'm also not comfortable supporting the application. I do believe there's some discussion at City Hall at the moment with regard to laneway suites, and this may well change in the future. But for now, it's an application that I cannot support.
Thank you. Ms. Valentini, I think I saw your hand.
I was just going to agree with Ms. Hayes' comments. While it's nice to have a 2-bedroom laneway suite, I'm not satisfied that, that in fact may be too much of an ask given the size of this lot or the available rear yard space for the laneway suite. So I agree. I was conflicted about this one too. I don't think this is an easy application, and I think just the number of variances to squeeze a 2-bedroom laneway suite in here is too much. I understand the neighbors are okay with it, but I think we need to look at what the impact's going to be, just not on those current property owners, but just generally speaking. And I can't support this. I think it's too big for the available space in the rear yard.
Thank you. Mr. Chang.
Okay, I guess I'm the only one who supports this application. I'm looking at it as a grander scale. I look at it as right near the St. Clair East Avenue. This is a pretty dense, high density area. And I think the applicant have done its best to meet the partner's requirement to fit the size of what it is in the lot. I think with looking at the shadows, looking at the direction of the direction of the building, the shadow is going to pass back to the neighbor only in some particular time, and it looks like it is also building something at the back of the garage. So I don't think there will be shadow impact with even without that 45-degree cut. And I think that the density is appropriate in this block. I will support it, but that's my opinion.
Thank you very much. For my part, I won't be supporting the application. I am listening to what planning is saying, and I'm also concerned about the soft landscaping issue in the rear yard. I really like to see properties doing their share to manage stormwater, and this could be better than 23.19%. So, in that, having said all of that, I will look to panel for a motion, please. Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to move a motion to refuse the application as amended, as for all the reasons stated, and don't believe it meets the tests under the Planning Act.
Is there a second for that? There is a second. Ms. Valentini seconds. Moved and seconded to refuse. Those in favor, show of hands, please. Those opposed. Let the record show that Mr. Cheng opposes the motion. The result is that the application, or the motion, is carried and the application is refused. And panel moves along to number 5, 44 Glen Road. And on 44 Glen, we have some recently received items of correspondence. There's a tree inventory and preservation plan report from Trevor Whiteside, just received on November 1. There is a tree and garden, there is a protection plan also from Whiteside, November 1. And there is a form letter in support by owners occupants of 33 Maple, received 28 October. We also have before us the applicant's materials, presentation material from the agent, tree location and site plan from the agent, June 18th, tree inventory, already mentioned, from Trevor Whiteside. There's a staff report from Urban Forestry, and there is support correspondence in the form of 7 form letters signed by occupants of Dale Avenue, Maple Avenue, Powell Avenue, Glen Road, and again Dale Avenue and Maple Ave. So, with that, we'll ask the applicant please to join us by stating your name.
Hello, my name is Paul Raff. I'm the architect for the 44 Glen Road application.
Good morning to you. All right then, panel, on this application, do you have any questions for the architect? Would you like a presentation? How do you feel about it? I'm not hearing any requests for presentation.
I would be happy to speak briefly if you'd like. I have presentation materials to explain the variances.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. I just want to see if the panel needs it. They may not need it. Any questions? No. So, in that case, is someone ready to move a motion?
No, I have a question.
Oh,
actually.
question.
It's relating to the urban forestry recommendation that we deny the application. And I just want to understand which trees are going to be impacted. I understand, the way I understand it, there are a couple trees at the front that are part of a retaining wall. I don't think those necessarily reflect any of the variances, but I could be wrong about that. And is there a tree in the rear? Is that can you just speak to that issue, please?
Yes, I'd like to point out that Urban Forestry has rescinded that memo dated October 25th.
That's interesting. I don't know if I have that information. Maybe you can speak to that.
It's a memorandum from Urban Forestry's Nicholas Trevison dated November 2nd, where they say upon further review, because they indeed undertook a further review, they dispatched an arborist to the site who realized that the tree is indeed not in good condition. The tree in question, it is in poor structural condition, he writes. Therefore, Urban Forestry rescinds its memo dated October 25th, 2021, and does not object to the minor variances conditional on the submission of a complete application for a permit to injure and remove a privately owned tree, which of course we'll do.
Thank you very much. That's very important information.
Yeah, I don't think we have that information, do we? I don't see it in the supplementary materials unless somebody else knows where it is. No? Okay.
And yeah, so that's most important information. And Mr. Raff, can you tell us the date on that? I'm sorry, you mentioned, and would you mind
Yes.
repeating?
It is a memorandum from Nicholas Trebison, Supervisor Tree Protection and Plan Review, and the date on it, actually, it says it's received by Committee of Adjustment at 12:45 p.m. on November 2nd, 2021.
Just in.
Is that it?
4:45 p.m. November 2. So just yesterday evening, late. Yeah. Okay. Late afternoon.
At the wire.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us, Mr. Raff, about the application that we should know?
I would like to say that we are have been working very closely with the Heritage Department and have their support. Much of the focus of this project is to restore the front porch and some of the hillside and walkway and bring it back into keeping with the form and character of the neighborhood and to respect this exquisite period house.
Thank you. All right, then.
But just a further question then. So I did notice it was designated and you just spoke about working with Heritage, but we don't have any information from the Heritage Department on this one? Does anybody see otherwise, any conditions or anything like that? No?
May I speak to that?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yes, so we've had detailed communications, and if you don't mind bringing up the supplementary materials, I'll just show you. I think it clarifies visually. Are we able to bring those up?
Just give us a second. Yeah.
Hi there. Can you clarify which supplementary documents you wanted to bring up?
The file, it's 211026 44 Glen Road, C of A supplementary diagram package.
All right, let's just take a second here and see if we can find it.
Thank you.
While we're looking for that, I'm assuming you're going to be requiring to get a permit. Is that correct? A heritage permit?
Sorry, that's not the correct supplementary material. No, that's not it either.
Sir, what was the content of that supplement?
This is it. This is it. I believe heritage approval is required for a permit, well, we don't. That's not something we have that as an informal email only. So I'll just show this is the view from the street of the house as originally constructed in 1913. I'll just bring your attention to the fact that it is up a slight on a hillside with a.
Sorry, do you have that email from Heritage? I think we're just like we normally would get that from Heritage. So we've read all your materials. We just wanted to know whether or not Heritage has in fact set their normal condition that it's contingent upon the submission of plans. And you spoke to an email. We don't seem to have that.
I think our understanding was that Heritage would only register something on file if they had concerns about the application.
Okay, generally, I won't say it is applicable here, but generally, even if they have no concerns, they often will ask us to put a condition that it's subject to the plans being submitted to Heritage. Would you have any objection to that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, again, we're just. Are we still trying to find the materials?
No, these
are the ones. Okay, okay.
Yeah. If we move to the next page, page 2. That's the current condition of the house. You can see that the hillside was removed in the late 20th century to allow access to a basement garage, and the hillside was removed, and so was the entirety of the front porch. It was replaced with this smaller appendage, and the stairs were replaced with a geometrically complex form of stairs and retaining walls, which we'd suggest is not in keeping with the character and heritage of the neighborhood. And so in our, if you can move to the next slide, please. We are looking to, as much as possible, maintain the parking, but to restore some of the hillside and landscaping, the original general form of the staircase, and to actually reconstruct the original porch and restore the facade as well. And 4 out of the 6 variances in question are in fact triggered by the fact that if you move to the next slide, or exacerbated by the fact that this is the side elevation. By the way, you can see the tiny little basement windows, street levels way down in the front. Because of the removal of that hill in the front, the basement is being deemed by zoning laws the first floor. That is creating or exacerbating 4 out of our variances, out of our 6 variances, including the FSI. If you can move to the next slide, please. The FSI we're having to propose is 1.149 because the basement's included. If it were only above grade, it would be 0.788. This is a relatively small house in this neighborhood, and even including the basement, which is not a normal calculation, it's within the sort of reasonable range of these below, and you see recently approved FSIs in the immediate proximity of this house. Could we move to the next slide, please? I just want to show the context of this house. It's labeled in red, 44 Glen Road. You can see it's I wouldn't call it a small house, but in this neighborhood, it's one of the smaller houses or buildings. To its south is a large 1950s 3-story apartment building. I'll show an image of it in just a moment. On its backside, it is flanked by a 2.5-story wall of townhouses. And then there are other houses. It's a very lovely tree-lined neighborhood. Could we go to the next slide, please? The next slide shows a view from the subject property to the south of that 1950s apartment building. I just wanted to draw your attention to the balconies and living rooms that have a very clear overlook condition onto the subject property. Go to the next slide, please. Which brings us to the variances. The first variance listed as number 3, side yard setbacks. On the north side, we are just aligning the addition with the existing building, which is generating the need for about a 30 centimeter violation of setback. On the south side, we're asking to protrude a little further. We're still more than 10 meters away from the large apartment building to the south, but we're doing this so that we can get a little bit of a window and natural light on the bit of the face toward the street, so that we don't have to put windows and compromise our or our neighbors' privacy any more than it's already compromised. But we're still getting a 0.91 meter setback. And we can go to the next slide, please. We also rebuilding the heritage porch is also exacerbating our variances, including this side yard setback, which is required just to rebuild the heritage porch. We can go to the next slide, please. I want to speak to building length and depth. So the allowable building length is 17 meters. That's the first number shown in red. We're having to ask for 24.85 meters because the subgrade portions that we're trying to bury into the, under the landscaping are being counted. The above grade portion, if our ground floor were deemed the first floor by zoning, would be 18.86. So it's only a 1.86 meter ask for building length. And also, by the way, building depth is the only building on this street that protrudes beyond the faces of the row of houses is 40 Glen Road, and that's of course where building depth is measured from. So because of 40 Glen Road, it's exaggerating or exacerbating our building depth issue. Next slide, please. And this shows building length on the left, building depth on the right. I'm just pointing out again where we are in keeping with recent approvals of the committee in the immediate vicinity of this house, even when you count the below grade in. When you don't count the below grade in, which perceptually is reasonable, we're well under. If we can go to the next slide, please. Finally, the last 2 variances have to do with these platforms. These are platforms above first floor. Of course, the first floor in this case is the basement. So even the deck on the back, which is only 2 steps up from the lawn and normally wouldn't require a variance.
I must ask you to make your final comments now, please.
Okay, the heritage, go to the final slide. So the other platforms are the heritage porch at the front and a second floor deck, which is no larger than the existing second floor deck. It's reconfigured to set back from the north face to actually improve the privacy and overlook conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, so panel, any final questions of the applicant before we go into committee? No. Let's go into committee now then.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I did find a comment in our file with regards to Heritage, and it's just simply noted that Heritage is simply supportive of the C of A application and will work with the applicant on refinements through the building permit phase.
That's important. Thank you. Did everyone get that, panel? Yeah.
Does that mean a condition is not necessary then in that case?
I would say so.
No,
It's not required.
No condition.
No condition needed. Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start off. Thank you very much to the applicant for the clarification with respect to the forestry matter. The materials that were filed with the committee were very, very helpful, I found, in terms of putting into context the variances that were being requested. I think the redesign of the front is quite lovely and actually will recreate and reinforce the heritage character of the neighborhood. The existing FSI is 0.819, and the FSI being requested in terms of above ground is 0.788, and then the basement on top of it to be to the 1.15. I think we've received a satisfactory explanation with respect to how the topography of the property contributes to those variances. With respect to the platforms, I think one is the porch at the front, and I think the explanation from the applicant satisfies me with respect to the number of platforms. All in all, I think this is a very respectful redesign and updating of the current property, and I would be in support of the application. If my colleagues have no further comments, I would move a motion to approve the application, but because of the depth variance, I would like to just tie it to plan so that it is clear with respect to the context within which the depth variance is being requested.
Does it need an urban forestry condition?
No, because they rescinded their comment.
Okay.
From what the submission said. That would be my motion.
That's good. Okay, then that motion's put forward. Is there a second? There is a second, Mr. Cheng. So moved.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in reviewing the forestry comments that came quite late, it does speak to they don't object to the variances conditional on the submission of a complete application for a permit to injure or remove a privately owned tree. So they are asking
is that
for
number 2?
that. Yes, that would be
Urban forestry
number
2.
Okay, so then I'll add forestry number 2 to the motion then.
Excellent. And the motion is seconded by Mr. Cheng. Moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Unanimous vote to carry the motion. The application is approved. So at this stage, I'm going to call a 10-minute recess, and the committee will resume at 10 minutes to 12 with our deliberations. Thank you.
Hi, there's an anonymous caller on the line. I just wanted to inquire who is, which file you're here and what is your name? I'm just going to unmute you now. Hi, I've unmuted a call-in user with no number. If you can just speak to which file you're in here for. I have no.
We resume now with, my mic is on. We resume now with item number 6, 116 Dovercourt Road. And on this application we have before us applicant's materials, 2 photographs from 30th of June, supporting material from the agent, 27 October. There's a staff report from engineering and construction, and also from urban forestry. And we have a 9-signature petition in support, signed by owners of occupants of properties on Dovercourt and Lisgar. And moderator, I do understand we have 1 speaker registered in opposition? Thank you. In that case, we'll now ask the agent to join us, please, by stating your name.
My name is Bart Soki. I'm the agent for the owners.
Good morning, Mr. Zoki. You'll have 5 minutes to address your comments to the panel. Starting now, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. Good morning, committee members. We submitted some supporting material and some drawings, so I wonder if you could bring those up, please. Yes, yeah. If you could go to the first, the site plans. Great, thank you. Thanks very much. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the context. The 116 Dovercourt is it's a bit unusual. It's a wide lot in this neighborhood. Typically the lots are about half the width, in terms of existing conditions, the uppermost plan that on these two site plan drawings indicates some existing conditions. The dark gray is the footprint of the proposed laneway suite. It is also the area of existing parking with carports and hard surfacing. And then the green area, of course, is soft landscape, and that is existing soft landscape in the rear yard. The red broken line, that's the outline of a permitted laneway suite at 8 meters wide and 10 meters deep. And the blue broken lines are indicating kind of the view width or view corridor up and down, north to south across the rear yards. The drawing below is with the pink area indicates the footprint of what would be if you were to place a laneway suite at the permitted width and depth. So what we're trying to do with these 2 drawings and the drawings that follow is illustrate the benefits of not of keeping the laneway suite at a shorter depth at 6 meters, and then stretching it across the full width of the property. And in doing that, we're able to keep a larger soft landscape area than if we were to put a permitted laneway suite footprint on the lot. And we're also able to maintain the view corridor up and down to the north and south. If we had a 10-meter depth, the impact, we would be encroaching on the view, particularly from the property at 114, and a bit less so at 120. So if you go to the next slide, you can see these areas of impact for the view. The overall blue area is the area that we're proposing. If we had placed a laneway suite of a 10-meter depth, the blue area with the cross hatching would be the area left over. So it's a reduction in the view area. And then if you continue to the next slide. So this is just to illustrate this view from the lane. So we're not asking for variance in height, just in width. And this is just to illustrate that if it were 2 lots and you had 2 laneway suites side by side as of right, it would be a similar building face facing the lane, same impact on the lane. So to speak a bit more directly to the variances, with the soft landscaping, we're maintaining soft landscaping. If anything, we're actually increasing it by a slight margin, a couple of percent. And with the stair, we're just asking for a small variance to be 0.1 meters closer to the lot line than permitted. So the major variance is, of course, the width, where we're asking for 14.66 meters instead of 8 meters. So in short, we think that configuring the laneway suite this way is a benefit, to both to the property at 116, but also to 114 and 120. And we respectfully request that the committee approve the variances as minor.
Bruce, we can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
Thank you very much. My mic was turned off. So we're just determining now if we can connect with the speaker registered in opposition. So stand by, please.
Hi, Matthew Posanol, you are unmuted if you're able to speak.
Good morning, Matthew.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I may have to give Matthew a call.
Well, let's do that, please. We're just calling the speaker now.
Hi, Matthew, you are unmuted on your phone if you're able to speak.
Hello.
Yes, we have you now, Matthew. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
You have 5 minutes to address your concerns to the committee. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, members of Committee of Adjustment. Regarding application at 116 Dovercourt, my name is Matthew Pauldanell, and I live at 120 Dovercourt Road with my family. We use our rear yard extensively and are already affected by the imposing stairway which descends from the house at 116 adjacent to our south lot line. We accept the desire to build a laneway suite that is with reasonable scale and that fits with the pattern of the adjacent building lot scales on our street. However, the current proposal stretches the scale beyond the current pattern of house lots, imposes serious privacy encroachment, and at 1.8, the maximum allowable width of 8 meters is not a minor variance. We have not been consulted by the owners of 116 Dovercourt whatsoever on the current proposal, and would have opposed it if we had been. Proposing instead something like what was written below. We hereby ask the committee to defer this file until proper consultation with neighbors occurs and the plan revised to reflect our concerns. Variance 1, or variance 2, proposes to build a full width, full lot, build out laneway structure that is 1.8 times the allowable width for that lot. The current stairway which descends from the main house already overlooks into our rear yard. The current proposed laneway suite stair mirrors the existing stair to the east, effectively doubles the amount of people moving directly on our lot line, and significantly diminishes our privacy in our rear yard. Creates a visual wall of 2-story external stairway structures, and blocking out our natural light in the backyard and house, as noted in the email sent with pictures. We propose that the suite with the limit to approximately 75% of the proposed width of 48 feet or a maximum of 36. This would result in a structure that is 11 meters wide or a proposed increase of a 1.39 times the maximum and would approximately align with the intent of minor variance. Only 3 parked vehicles permitted. The structure would terminate just south of the existing tree, and the access stair could be either more centered to the structure, buffering, overlooking, and privacy encroachment to both adjacent lots, north and south. It could easily descend into the soft landscape space between our south lot line and the north wall of the suite. Between the suite's north wall and our property line would be then partially a green space, thereby going back to the proposed variance to decrease the minimum soft landscaping while maintaining more privacy for us and the suite occupants above. It would also create a space for recycle bins, bicycles, and fire access if required. It does not reach the character of the neighborhood laneway house, and the owner of the owner of Dovercourt South Evans have not been contacted. They're elderly, both north and south. They have no means of addressing this situation. That's all.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Pauldanell? Thank you very much, Mr. Pauldanell. We'll go back now.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I was just thinking about what he had said. So are you suggesting then that the stair, I'm assuming the biggest concern for you is the stairway and from the second floor of the laneway suite down, the external stairway?
Yes.
What are you
because there's
suggesting
one
in
already.
terms of, oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't have your photos, so I don't know. I don't know where they are. They're not. They must have arrived late, or they're not in my materials. So there's an existing stairway already outside. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, there's an existing staircase on the south lot line that's on the north side of their property that accesses to the second floor apartment, which is right along our lot line.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's to the house. I see. And now there'll be a stairway from the laneway suite down to the grade
Correct.
from the second floor.
So they both meet each other in a matter of blocking our view and our sunlight and our privacy.
Right. Okay. That helps.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back now to the applicant. An applicant concerns raised here regarding privacy as a result of the nature of your application. In fact, there's a concrete proposal here, a suggestion that 11 meters wide might be appropriate, but nearly 15 is not. That your project should be limited to 3-car parking rather than 4, because as you propose it, it is in the speaker's view, it's not in character with the nature of the neighborhood. Also concerned about the external stairway that comes down from the 2nd floor of the house. If you would address those issues, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to privacy and overlook, excuse me, one of the reasons for keeping the depth at 6 meters is that it aligns, more or less with the garage buildings to the north and south along the lot. So we have less of an overlook condition or impact because we're not pushing forward into the rear yard lot space where we would either be producing a wall or overlook conditions. So we're trying to mitigate that impact by keeping the depth narrower, or keeping the depth at 6 meters. The stair position, it made sense to put it on the north side because there's a right-of-way, a shared right-of-way that runs from the front of the lot right to the existing garage at the back, and that was, we're proposing that as the emergency access into the laneway suite. So to be able to have that stair, immediately off of that right of way, there's some efficiency to that. It also helped us stay within the 90-meter distance for from a hydrant on the street. So so that made some sense. It also, if we moved the stair further into the middle of the lot, we were going to have to put some hard landscaping there. So we were going to end up reducing some of the the soft landscaping that we were already at variance with. With regard to the stairs, the existing stair that's coming down from the house, yes, this stair was going to come down in the same position. Whether or not that was going to produce an appreciable increase in traffic up and down, I don't know. So the decision was to keep it on that north side. Excuse me,
I'd like to get it. Could you address the issue of the width of the laneway suite, please?
What we thought was, given that we have a wide lot and we have existing parking and a carport there, we're not increasing any height. The impact to the lane is the same. We're not making a building that's any deeper than the existing garages in the 6-meter depth. So the width is really just taking advantage of the width of the lot.
Okay, thank you. Question, Ms. Valentini, go ahead.
Yes, I'm less concerned about I suppose the width of the laneway suite. I thought you raised a good point that if it was a regular sized lot, you could have 2 laneway suites side by side. The impact would be the same. But I do have some concerns about this staircase. I don't think we often see, unless someone can correct me, external staircases from the 2nd floor to the laneway suites. Often they're inside, I believe, unless this is like some sort of fire code issue or some sort of safety issue that you need the external staircase. I hadn't realized until the neighbor pointed out that there was another staircase on the house, so I don't have the benefit of his photos to see that. and it's quite a long staircase, so I'm assuming that looks right over his fence. Can you speak to why the staircase is outside of the laneway suite rather than inside? I believe often you see, and I could be wrong, I don't know if this is a fire code reason, but can you speak to why that's there?
In this case, it was really just to preserve floor area in the dwelling or in the dwelling level. All of the living spaces up on the second floor, so to have the staircase outside meant we could just preserve living space.
So that's the primary entrance for the secondary, for the suite upstairs?
Yes, it is.
I think if you look at drawing, there's a site plan that you can see that the architect was trying to align or kind of work around the landing with the house, with the other stairs at the front. So I assume that's how he wants to increase the soft landscape in the middle, rather than running the staircase down. And there's another plan in color. Yeah, it's the same one. So he's grouping all the staircase in that area.
Okay, I'm going to ask staff, please, if they'd put up the slide that the applicant noted previously. It showed the comparative impacts of a single width or of a compliant width laneway suite. I think that's it. Yes, okay, this is the slide. Okay, applicant, my question for you is this. So I'm looking at the lower example where the laneway suite is compliant in width. And if you went with that approach, could you not, in fact, meet, if you didn't have the extra two-car parking there to the above it on the drawing, couldn't you meet your rear soft landscaping and be compliant with respect to rear soft landscaping? When I look at the top example where you have the 14, almost 15 meter wide laneway suite across the entire back of the property, you are deficient in terms of rear soft landscaping, and there's an opportunity to, on the first example, to avoid that. Also, I was concerned about the view, in fact, from the laneway of the actual massing of this double width laneway suite. It seemed the massing was substantial. I thought the impact was negative. So I'd ask you to address those issues, please.
Speaking to the soft landscape, yes, if in the second example or the lower plan, if we were to stretch the soft landscaping around the side of the building, there we might have enough to comply. Although, we're basically, the part of the soft landscaping that we're biting out of what's existing, we would just put on the side. So I'm not sure. I'd have to do a calculation to actually be sure that we'd comply. But there's parking spaces back there that even if we went to 3 parking spaces, I don't think we would have sufficient soft landscaping. And in terms of the massing, as I tried to point out in the third slide, from the laneway suite, if the lots were, if this were 2 lots, and a more typical the width of the lots along Dovercourt, you could have 2 laneway suites side by side. It would be the same, same building elevation to the lane, same massing to the lane.
Let me ask you this: is this lot at 15.24 meters, 50 feet, a 50-foot lot? It is unusual, I guess. Is it kind of a rarity on the street there, or are the other ones, the typical 7 point something 25 meter lots?
Yes, typically they're half the width. I see there is one other lot, about a block north that's, looks like it's a double width like this.
Yeah.
But normally they're about 7.5 meters.
Yeah, okay. Okay, then thank you. Any other questions, panel? Yes, there is. Let's go with Ms. Hayes first, followed by Mr. Cheng.
Just point of clarification, look at your drawing A6. So, are the garage doors only on the laneway side and it's open to the rear yard? Or is there enclosed, like, are the cars accessible from the rear yard? Like, there's no door showing. So is it basically a carport? Like only garage doors to the laneway?
That's correct.
So having said that, then I guess I fail to understand, given the drawings that have been submitted, why that staircase cannot be moved even marginally, even if it's to meet the zoning bylaw requirements. I mean, and there's going to be a full balcony across the full stretch of that the overhang, which can be another overlook potential situation. So I'm not certain why that staircase can't be moved.
Well, I think it could be moved. It's something I would need to discuss with the owners, but I think it could be moved to the interior of the lower level.
The question.
Question, Mr. Cheng.
A0, there's a side elevation. I think it's A07, right?
Mr. Cheng, I'm having trouble hearing you. If you wouldn't mind speaking up a little bit, please.
A09 or A-09. Right, so you can see that as a carport is not closed. And I guess the question is about the proximity of this staircase to your neighbor. So are you okay if we put some privacy screen along the staircase?
Yes, that could be done.
Because the other way around is to rotate the staircase. You extend the landing and go down, but then you have to redo the calculation of your soft landscape, and a lot of things will be changed. And when you mentioned about enclosing it, I don't know if the zoning examiner would consider that as part of the GFA increase, because it becomes a hidden space, right? So, but generally for me, I think I agree that it is a city. I don't have a problem with the massing. I don't have a problem with you basically float up the secondary street on top and carports down below. It's just this staircase is creating trouble to you all. I understand why you put it there, but for your neighbors and for the zoning, I think it's not. You're not being a good neighbor to put the staircase there. So,
Okay, is there a question there for the
I
applicant?
guess
I'm sorry, Aaron, is there a question there for the applicant?
no more. That's just my comment. It looks like he's flexible to move the staircase. I think if I'm going to support this application, there will be a condition of adding a privacy screen on the staircase. Rotating the staircase might work, but then we have to redo the soft landscape calculation, and closing it would increase the GFA. So that's my take.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's see. Are there any further questions for the applicant by panel members? No. In that case, let's take the application into committee, and I would look to your comments on the application, panel members. Ms. Hayes, please go ahead.
I think firstly, I think that going the full width doesn't necessarily concern me. I think the illustration of the impact of a deeper laneway suite, and if you had two smaller lots, it may actually be greater. I do have a concern with respect to the staircase. The cumulative impact of the staircase from the house and the staircase from the laneway suite, I think it that cumulatively is too much of an adverse impact in my opinion to the neighbor. I don't think that any screening would solve that issue particularly. It may actually make the stairway have a bigger mass. I guess if one of my thoughts would be if the applicant is amenable to altering the location of the stairway, we can't deal with that on the fly today because it would potentially adjust other variances or potentially other variances. But if he was amenable to that, I would be amenable to a deferral to allow for that to change, but otherwise I can't support the application with the variance for the access stair.
Thank you very much. Other thoughts on that? Mr. Byatt, go ahead.
Azir, you're muted.
Sorry about that again. Yeah, I think Ms. Hayes makes some very good points. You know, when I'm looking at drawing number A06, and from what I can see is that the staircase goes to the, I'm not sure what the compass direction is of this property at the moment. This is the east elevation, so I imagine this is the north side where the staircase is currently set. My thought would be, again, this is for the architect. I again have no concern about the width of the house. I think given the width of the property, it's fine. But the location of the stairs, why is it possible to relocate the stairs midway along that balcony? So midway, and just relocate the entrance to the unit, and that would place the staircase right in the middle of the laneway suite, away from the neighbor, away from both neighbors, almost equidistant if that's possible. And if that, I think if that's the only impediment, if that design change may be the one that will get approval, allow for approval of this application.
Thank you very much. Ms. Valentini, any thoughts?
I agree with Ms. Hayes. I think I stated earlier, I don't have an issue with the double wide width. Like, I think the explanation provided by Mr. Soki made sense. Like, this is a wide lot. It could be two laneway suites side by side. So it's not the size of the laneway suite, it's a staircase. I wish he had put the staircase inside, to be honest. That would have been more of the neighborly thing to do, especially if there's this giant staircase running from the house, which I had not noticed on the plans until the neighbor brought that up. So, you know, I don't really know how to deal with that. I mean, we can deny variance number 3, but that doesn't prevent him from putting a staircase in 0.1 meters further, 0.6 meters from the lot line. So, I'm in support of the staircase on the outside, and I don't think putting I'm sorry, I'm almost done, Mr. Chang. Putting a privacy screen on the staircase is going to work, so I'm not supportive of that. It's going to be a giant mass running through the backyard.
Okay, and for my part, listening to my colleagues, my concerns with respect to width of the proposed laneway suite are assuaged. Makes sense now. I do have the same concern about the staircase. I would like to see it placed internally, and I'd be willing to, I would support a motion that that deferred the application specifically to allow the architect to relocate the staircase to the inside. Mr. Chang. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to design, and I just want to ask the applicant. is it okay to reduce the width of the balcony and convert part of it to the staircase? So in that case, you won't change the GFA, you won't change the green space, you won't change the soft landscape. You just cut half of the balcony becomes a staircase running along the building. Then the neighbor will be happy, the staircase won't be stuck in the middle. And we don't have to go through all these numbers again, and you don't have to do this.
Mr. Cheng, are you posing that question?
We don't have a GFA variance here. Is there a GFA cap on laneway suites?
No, sorry. What I'm trying to say is if we enclose the staircase, then that will become a GFA problem. So that was what I meant. But
Mr. Cheng,
GFA cap on laneway suites? I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
I think when the applicant was doing his original submission, though, he was also indicating that any adjustment to the staircase as part of the current application might also then trigger a different amount for the landscaping that is also being requested.
No.
So the design on the fly, I don't think is going to may not address all of the applications. So
no.
I think they're going to have to either, I guess my thought would be we can be generous and allow a deferral to allow them to come back, or deal with the application as submitted. So I would be prepared to allow for a deferral.
Well, so would I, and I think if we want to, we can make a suggestion that deferral would be specifically to allow the architect to relocate the staircase, I would say, to the inside. That'd be my preference. How do others feel about that kind of a motion?
I'm not sure we can direct that, but I think we could put language in that says to lessen the impact on the neighbor.
Okay, I go with that. Yeah, I go with that.
So I'd be prepared to move a motion for deferral to allow the applicant an opportunity to revisit their design with specific reference to the access to the laneway suite and the impacts on the neighbors.
Is there a second? It is seconded by Ms. Valentini. Those in favor, show of hands, please. And the motion is carried, unanimous vote, and the application is deferred as stated by Ms. Hayes. We move on to application number 7. On application number 7, 19 BELSIZE Drive, the committee has before it applicant's materials. There's a revised site plan, 15 October. There are a variety of Committee of Adjustment decisions dating back 2015, 2010, 13, 12, other dates. There are commenting reports from Transportation and Urban Forestry, and in opposition we have received one piece of correspondence from 21 BELSIZE Drive. So, I'll just see if there's any. Okay. All right, then on this one, we'll ask the agent to join us now by stating your name, please.
Ali Shakiri, 326 Shepherd Avenue East. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You do have 5 minutes, Mr. Shakiri, to make your presentation. Please proceed.
Sure. What we're proposing here is very similar to the other new developments in the area. I have submitted some support material. If I may ask that to be displayed, there are some comparables that basically showing that we did that as a case study to make sure what we're proposing is not over and beyond what's been granted in the area. And the very last few pages, if we can look at, there are some similar developments that are very proximate. The last 6 pages, there is a photograph of, yes, that's number 17, which is the adjacent house. Very similar kind of development. The next slide is, that is actually number 15. That number 19 is wrong. Number 15 is 2 doors away on the west side. Very similar. And then next slide, so on and so forth. Very similar houses in close proximity to this development. We've been in contact with the planning. They suggested that we provide a raised planter and a privacy screen on the west side of the rear deck, which we accepted. The site plan before you is demonstrating that revision, and I do not have any further comments. Happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Let's go to the registered speaker first, then return to Mr. Shakiri. So we'll ask the speaker to join us now, please. Speaker or speakers, by stating your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Simon Kerwin. I live next door to the applicant at number 21 BELSIZE Drive. I submitted a letter to you last week in which I point out much of what the applicant has just himself pointed out, that there are 8 houses in this immediate area around us that have gone through the process of gaining variances to do with height and width and distance from the lot lines, and also the garage the front use of the garage under the house. And my question for the committee is, do the bylaws actually apply anymore? Or are these exceptions or variances automatically granted? It would seem that if that's the case, then this new build, while we don't like the idea that it's going to deprive us of sunlight, as the new house is going to go way down the garden, we don't like that. By and large, it's in line with what's been happening in the neighborhood. So we imagine that the principal variances will be granted, and there's not very much, that's inevitable, not very much we can do about that, or indeed complain about, except grumble, and that's not very helpful, is it? However, we do have concerns about the rear deck or platform. I had not seen what has just been exposed, some revision to that rear deck, something to do with the screen. That's the first time I've seen it, and I couldn't quite follow it. It was far too quick for me. But the concerns we have are not only that it's more than twice the area allowed under the bylaw, but it is also projected to start at over 2 meters above grade, therefore well above the height of any fence that's likely to be built along the property line, and further reducing privacy in our property to the east of number 19. And we're concerned about that. We think that's far too big and far too high, and I'm not quite sure what the committee can do about that, but we're complaining about that, objecting to that rather. The final point is relatively minor. The rear elevation, which we have, I'm not sure if you have it, but the rear elevation indicates a window which the neighbor has referred to me as a box window protruding out of the second floor above the rear deck. That's obviously beyond the footprint of the house, and it also has windows which, to my mind, will intrude even more on privacy we have, because it can look into our garden even more easily. So that's where we are. I thank you for listening to me. I hope you can give me some satisfaction on these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerwin. You did ask whether applications are automatically approved, and I should give you a very recent example. In this morning's hearing so far, we have heard 6 applications. The committee, in its wisdom, felt obliged to refuse 2 of those. Further to that, a 3rd application was deferred to allow the applicant to mitigate some issues that the committee identified. So committee very much does look at applications on an individual basis and weighs them individually. With respect to your other issues, I will go back now to the agent who has an opportunity for rebuttal. And agent, the issues raised here are relate to privacy and overlook. For example, concern about height, but also on your rear elevation, for example, there's a box window jutting into the rear yard, which concern about that providing opportunity for even higher exaggerated overlook. So we ask you to address those issues, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for addressing the first question or concern raised by Mr. Corbin. Regarding the size of that rear deck, that's actually on the opposite side of Mr. Corbin's property. We have it on the west side of the proposed house, and as I mentioned, it has undergone a review by the planning department, very careful review, and we accepted their direction with regards to the privacy. So let's say even if we were to comply with that, with the zoning bylaw, that rear deck would have been the 2.5 meter projection is not a variance. We have a variance for the area and the side yard setback, which is on the opposite side, on the west side. So a deck that is complying with the bylaw would be adequately causing the same concern by the other neighbor, I would say, if there is any concern. Part of that deck, by the way, is that 9.5 meter we're asking includes the raised planter. So the actual area of the deck is smaller than 9.5 meters. And once again, the projection of that deck 2.5 meter is within the provisions of the zoning bylaw. With regards to the projection on the second floor, that is a bay window. That's a permitted projection. It's not a variance. The area of that bay window is included in the calculation of the floor area, and that is not basically generating any variance because of the projection beyond the main wall of the building. The depth of this building is 54 feet or 16.5 meter. I'm sure that you're well aware that the building as of right can be 17 meter long. This is not 17 meter. This is not encroaching into any of the required side yards. And the length of the building is also in compliance. We did all our efforts to make sure we are not setting any new precedent based on what we have studied. This is in keeping with the character of the immediate neighborhood, and we did our best to make sure it meets the 4 tests, and we hope that the panel feels the same way. If there is any question, I'd be more than glad to answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, panel members, question from Ms. Valentini. Go ahead.
And when I'm looking at your revised plans, Mr. Shakiri, is there privacy screens on both sides? Because I see the site plan shows the planter and the screen. But if I'm looking at the elevations, A08, I believe, is that the neighbor that's called in on the east side? Is there screening on both sides, or is that just screen from the opposite side that shows up both A08 and A09, I guess?
No, screening is only on the west side, which is the side that is proximate to the adjacent neighbor, number 17. Usually, there's no screen, any side screen when the other side of the deck is in the middle of the house. So
okay.
It's not usual to do that. We have no objection if you want to impose such a condition, but architecturally it won't be very pleasant for the owner who wants to live in the house, but it is possible to do.
So you're saying because the deck is pulled back from the other side, I see.
Yes.
It doesn't need screening. Okay, thank
That's
you.
correct, yes. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, is anyone on panel ready to make a motion at this stage? Ms. Valentini?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I understand what the neighbor is saying in terms of, you know, concerns about the dwelling, and particularly given the length of the dwelling in comparison to his at 21. But I think Mr. Shakiri makes a good point in that there isn't actually a depth variance in this case, or length variance either. And he has brought forward comparables that I think show that this does fit within some of the new development that has happened in the area. I have no concerns myself with this proposed development. The one thing I did sort of flag when I was looking at it was the integral garage, but I mean, there are a couple right there. So I'm in support of the application. I was concerned about the deck and overlook, but as Mr. Shakiri pointed out, that deck is pulled back from the side, the west side, so perhaps screening isn't, or sorry, maybe I got the sides mixed up. The east side, I believe. So I think screening on the one side as proposed and shown in the revised plans is suitable. So I don't know if anybody wants to make any other comments. I'm happy to bring a motion forward though.
Go ahead.
Motion forward for approval of the application. I think we should tie it to the site plan, which shows the revised site plan that shows the screening with the planter and screening, and as well urban forestry condition number 3.
Thank you. It is seconded by Mr. Byatt. Moved and seconded to approve, subject to revised plans and urban forestry. All those in favor, show of hands, please. That motion is carried, unanimous vote, and the application is so approved. Panel moves along to item number 8, which is 54 Camberwell Road. And on 54 Camberwell, we have the applicant's materials, we have support correspondence and opposition correspondence. In support from 201 Glen Cedar, and 7 form letters in support from 46, 50, 51, 53, 55 Camberwell, and 199 and 203 Glen Cedar. There is correspondence in opposition from 201 Glen Cedar and from 52 Camberwell. And recently just received, we have correspondence in support from 201 Glen Cedar. Okay. And on this application, moderator, we do have one person standing by to speak?
We have someone listed to observe.
To observe.
Correct.
They don't wish to speak.
You can confirm with them if you wish.
Let's do that. Good afternoon. We're for Jody Weber or Sid Lieberman.
Hi, is this Jody Weber? I have unmuted you.
Good afternoon. I understand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
So I unfortunately would have loved to speak, but I'm driving. This is running a little bit late, but I can speak after the architect makes his presentation quickly if you'd like.
It's up to you. Do you wish to speak?
Will my objections be read?
They'll be heard.
They'll be heard, so
We
they will not be actually read.
Well, we're actually in the committee. The committee is in progress right now. So this is your opportunity to speak to the committee directly. We're in public hearing.
They would have been read if they were submitted as part of the package, yes.
Thank you. If I can, if you are hearing me properly, then I will have a few comments.
Okay, please stand by now. We're going to hear a presentation from the agent. Agent, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Drew Laszlo, agent for the owner.
Very good. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'll briefly go over the variances. I'm not going to keep them in numerical order. I might jump around a bit for kind of obvious reasons. First, I just want to touch upon variances numbers 2, 3, and 5, having to do with the building length, the building depth, and the rear setback. I just want to bring to the committee's attention that the only reason we need those variances is because we are excavating below the proposed rear deck. If we were not excavating below the deck, we would only have 3 variances before us. Okay, so just if I could get on, I'll go back, just discussing variance number 1, having to do with the depth of the deck. One thing I'd like to bring to the committee's attention is our house, just using round numbers for the discussion purposes, our house is approximately 4 feet shorter than what the bylaw permits. Our deck is approximately 4 feet longer than what the bylaw permits. So the bottom line is the rear wall of the proposed deck is really at the as-of-right location. As far as variance number 4 is concerned, that has to do with the FSI. Very typical for the neighborhood. There's other, as examples, there's other houses on Camberwell at 85%, a new house 128%. So quite typical for the vicinity. As far as variance number 6 is concerned, that has to do with the south side yard setback. Again, very common. 0.6 meters is very typical. We're going a bit more than that. So we are about 2.5 feet or 0.76 meters away from the south side property line. That's all I'd like to say at this point.
Thank you very much. Okay, then let's go back to the registered speaker who's standing by.
That's me, Jody Weber of 52 Camberwell Road. Am I being heard?
Yes, Jody, you are now speaking directly to the panel of the Committee of Adjustment, which is in session. So please proceed.
Thank you to the committee members. I've had to leave, so I don't have my notes in front of me. So I'll be fairly brief. We have met with the owners of the property. They graciously came to us with the plans prior to us receiving the committee public hearing notes. We had the opportunity to review the plans, and as Dror, Hermel, and Michal advised us, the only issue we really had was with the rear deck. So the deck, the end of the deck will take us to 22 feet beyond where their property is today, and the deck will rise about 10 feet. The deck will begin from 10 feet above ground and will go 6 feet up. When my husband and I met with Drew and Michal prior to receiving the public hearing notice, they advised us not to worry. They were aware that there would be some issues with the deck, but they would build privacy screening at 6 feet above the deck. In fact, when we had the opportunity to review the plans, they are not 5 feet, they are 4 feet 11 inches. And so we will have a significant impact on our privacy. We use our deck in our backyard very regularly. They have a deck that will be 10 feet above ground and will go to 22 feet back. We have written and corresponded with the architect and the property owners to say we are fine with this, providing they agree to one of 2 things. Option 1 would be a fence, a densely crafted fence with no visibility through, rising at 6 feet from the floor of the deck, or option 2, to add very dense foliage rising a minimum of 6 feet from the deck. Our response to that was just to summarize, we did not object to anything except the privacy factor. We would be fine with it and have no other issues other than we want them to create some privacy screening, and that's my comment.
Okay, question for you. You want the privacy screening, whether it's densely crafted fence or dense foliage, you want it to be no less than 6 feet in height, is that correct?
Correct, from the floor of the deck, yes.
From floor of the deck. Thank you very much. Okay, then we shall go back now to the applicant. An applicant, we've heard from the next door neighbor who does cite meeting with the owner, but concern about the height of the deck, leading to overlook and privacy issues, and stating a strong preference that the screening on their side of the deck should be should represent or should be of a height of 6 feet or 2 meters, for example. Could you respond to that, please?
Sure, of course. Okay, first of all, yes, so we have no problem, you know, if we were fortunate enough to be approved, if the committee was to put on a condition, you know, stating that the foliage would need to be a minimum, you know, 1.8 meters or 6 feet high. So we have no issue with that. One thing that I'm not sure if it's, because I know, you know, if you're not familiar reading architectural plans, sometimes you don't pick these things off. But one thing I think the committee as well as the south neighbor should know is the side of the proposed deck is actually 8 feet away from the side property line. So I think that in itself goes a long way towards, you know, just giving privacy just due to the fact, you know, due to the proximity away, you know, from that side property line.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions, applicant? Sorry, panel members for the applicant. Panel? Hearing none, are we ready to move to a motion? Anyone with a motion? Ms. Valentini, go ahead.
I'm in support of the application. In my view, I think it meets the four tests. I do think the only issue is the privacy because of the nature of the raised deck. So I would like to see privacy screening on that deck. Typically, we put a 1.5 meter height. I don't know how my colleagues feel about higher screening. I don't know if that violates any other bylaws. Yeah, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, Ms. Hayes.
Jump in.
I would support screening, but I would prefer to keep to our standard of 1.5.
That's fine.
And given what the applicant said with respect to the separation in terms of distance from the lot line, I think that should provide what is being sufficient buffer. That would be my thoughts.
Tend to sit on their deck, and they're not going to be typically peering over the top. So I agree with that. I didn't know if that was something that others, you know, wanted to see it higher. But anyway, that's fine. Then the motion would be for approval, subject to the screening, opaque privacy screening, 1.5 meters, the typical condition we put on that. There are no other conditions.
Thank you. There is a second to that, and it is Mr. Byatt first. Thank you. So moved and seconded to approve privacy screening 1.5 meters on the deck.
Is that
all
both
those
sides? Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, on both sides?
Thank you very much. So coming back to Ms. Valentini, question from staff here, from the Deputy Secretary Treasurer. Is that both sides?
I think it's shown both sides on the plan. So yeah, both sides.
Both sides 1.5. Thank you. Moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor, show of hands, please. And the motion is carried unanimously. The application is so approved. The panel moves on to an item number 9, 39 Chandos. or Chandos. I'm not sure how people who live on the street pronounce it. On this application, the applicant's materials are on file, plus a covering letter from the agent, 27 October, and there are 2 form letters in support by the owners of 37 and 40 Chandos. And on this application, I'll ask the agent to join us, please, by stating your name.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the community. My name is Barry Goldman. I am the architect for this project and the agent representing the owner. Minor correction that the letter in support was actually 41, so we have 37 and 41. They are the adjacent neighbors on either side.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Just want to make that clear. I'm happy to make a presentation if you like, or answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, I'm going to just refer to the panel on that. Panel, would we like a presentation here, or are there any specific questions you'd like to address to the applicant? Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
Just one question. The examples that you provided with respect to FSI in depth, I didn't see any examples on Chandos itself. Is there any similar depths and FSIs in closer proximity than what's shown on?
I believe there are. Our research goes back for a total of 5 years and 500 meters. If staff could pull up on our cover letter, we have an image showing the rear of the adjacent buildings. I believe it's page 404 of my cover letter. And thank you, that is the image I'm looking for. And you can see the second floor addition of our building is well behind the rear wall of the house at the end of Chandos. And our 1-story rear addition more or less lines up with the rear of the adjacent house. So that was constructed before the period that we were able to research. In terms of FSI, without belaboring it too much, we are raising the existing main floor of the house rather than underpinning the basement to achieve a higher ceiling height in the basement. By doing that, we are bringing the basement floor closer to grade than the main floor so that the basement is considered as part of the FSI. But I'd suggest to the committee that that is a technical variance. We could, with the same massing, simply underpin the basement floor and the FSI would be 0.65. So I'd ask the committee to consider the functional FSI that we're seeking is 0.65. And on that basis, we're suggesting that the FSI we're seeking is well in keeping with the neighborhood and is not a very high number at all.
Very good. And thanks for pointing that out. We do understand. Okay, Ms. Hayes.
On that note, the variance with respect to first floor height, there in the chart that you provided, there's really only one example provided on Davenport. Can you speak to how, what the height to first floor generally is on surrounding properties, and because this is quite a change. I understand the desire not to have to dig down, but often the compensating to making the first floor higher can be quite stand out quite a bit. So I'd like your submissions on that, please.
Certainly. We're proposing to raise the main floor by roughly 12 inches from the existing condition. In terms of the massing that we're proposing, it literally would not change.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Valentini, go ahead.
I just had a concern in terms of the softscape at the back. I noticed you have a variance for 0%, and I think I noted somewhere, I wrote a note down that the existing is about 11% softscape in the rear yard. And then looking in the plans, I think you have permeable pavers. Is that correct? At some point in some portion of your backyard?
Yes, the portion that we are touching, we're proposing to put permeable pavers.
And is there any way to have any softscape at all, or is it because of the garage? I'm assuming the garage.
In order to access the existing garage, it's there now, and it does have 2 parking spots. And because of where we've located our stairs down, which is also not to interfere with vehicles on the rear, we didn't think it would be a good idea to introduce softscaping on that edge. I understand that, you know, we do want to get rainwater draining into the soil, and that's precisely why we introduced that section of permeable.
And would there be any concerns about tying it to the site plan for the purpose of ensuring that there's some permeable paving at the backyard, in the rear yard?
No concerns whatsoever. We're happy to accept that.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Or are we ready to move to a motion? Mr. Byatt, go ahead, please.
Hey, you're Hazy here. You're unmuted. Muted.
Sorry, that again. As I was just about to say, I think this is a fairly reasonable proposal, and I think the tying the application to permeable paving, as just was discussed a moment ago, would be quite appropriate. That is always a concern with regard to having soft landscaping. So I would like to, if my colleagues don't have any objections, I'd like to move a motion to accept the application with the condition that permeable paving be utilized in appropriate areas.
Very good.
Do we have to be a little more specific about where the permeable pavers are?
Certainly.
Tied to the site plan, maybe?
Tied to the site plan would be great. Thank you.
Very good, yeah. Second to the motion as amended. Okay, tied to the site plan. Seconded by Ms. Valentini. Moved and seconded to approve. Those in favor? Show of hands. Unanimous vote carries the motion. The application is approved. And panel moves on to 33 Ostend Ave. And we'll ask the applicant here to join us. The materials before the panel are those submitted by the applicant, 3 photographs, an application to injure or remove trees. There's a commenting report from Urban Forestry, and there are 7 form letters in support signed by owners and occupants: 347, 351 Windermere, 44 Mayfield, 29, 30, 31, 32 Ostend, all received by October the 8th. And we'll now ask the agent to join us, please, by stating your name.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Simon West. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you very well, Simon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Simon, I'm just going to check with the panel now whether they'd like a presentation or whether, alternatively, they have any questions for you. Panel, presentation, questions for the applicant? I'm not hearing any of either. No requests for presentation, no questions. Okay. Is there anything, anything in particular you want us to know about the application?
Yes, regarding the forestry comment, I received an email from Natasha Kenchana this morning regarding the comment from forestry, and it reads, I received it this morning at 11:40, and it reads, "Thanks for getting in touch. It seems that the condition was placed in error. I can provide a clearance letter. However, you will need to fill out the first page of the application form." So I'd actually like this forestry comment to be removed because they've realized that it's actually placed in error.
Thank you very much. Okay, just hang on for a second, please.
That would be up to committee to decide
Oh,
whether
okay.
that condition does or doesn't get
Okay.
imposed, depending on circumstance.
Oh, okay, applicant. Once again, would you repeat the name of the person, please, at forestry who sent you that?
Yes, and then there's Natasha Keshajivi, Keshavjee, and her first name Natasha, and she works with Nicholas Trevisano because he CC'd her on an email that I sent to him questioning why urban forestry had an issue, considering that I wasn't encroaching any neighbors' trees or any city-owned trees. So
Okay.
she wrote back to me and said, this is an error. I guess
Okay.
the city makes mistakes.
Thank you for that. Okay, good that we know that. We haven't, of course, received that email, but panel, that's before us now. So we can either include forestry or leave forestry out as we see fit. And I'll look to panel. Does anyone in panel have a motion to make with respect to this? Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this application is indeed minor. I think it's appropriate. I will accept the submissions of the applicant that he has received correspondence from forestry indicating that the condition's not necessary. So if my colleagues have no further comment, I would move a motion to approve the application, no conditions.
Thank you. It is seconded by Ms. Valentini. Moved and seconded to approve without condition. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Motion carried, and the application is approved without condition. Panel moves on to 100 Woodmount.
Sorry, through Mr. Chair, we do need to restart the YouTube stream. So
About 2 minutes?
yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we do need to do a technical changeover here. It'll take us about 2 minutes to resume. So we do return in about 2 minutes from now. Everybody stand by, please.
Yep, so anybody watching on YouTube, the stream is going to end. You'll find a new stream starting shortly.